Whitby, how much is fish and chips?
3 of us, fish, chips, peas, I think one of us curry sauce, 3 cans of pop, just short of 70 quid.
£70? That's 23 quid a head, man. Even my maths does that. Very quickly, a voice note. Campbell in Scotland, go.
Up here in Banff in the northeast of Scotland, we can get a fillet and a half of haddock with a regular chips for £8 and 10 pence, and it's by far and away one of the best chippies I've ever had.
Kenneth in Surrey, fish and chips, go.
Fish and chips in Ascot, about half a mile from where you used to live, will cost you £12 and 60 pence. Great show. Keep up the good work.
That's why I moved, because you were living there. When was the last time you had fish and chips?
Couple of weeks ago.
How much? Where'd you get it from?
I think it was about 40 quid. It was in the Ivy.
Honestly, you really are. For any of you who think he's a man of the people, I nearly said you're
Keeping it real.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good morning to you. Welcome to the show. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Big thanks to MG for giving us back the hot seat. And whether you're listening on DAB Plus radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, or as the son has pointed out, standing as a sheep on the top of a house. I love that picture. We are delighted that you are joining us. So much to talk about today. We've got top guests throughout the show. We've got the spending review. I know. It's all going to be fine, though, because, of course, Rachel Reeves has fixed the foundations of the economy. They've been saying that. She's been saying it. The Prime Minister's been saying it. Every minister's been wheeled out. They've been drip-feeding us a load of the announcements, you know, the nuclear reactors, the money we're told that's going to be coming for building social housing, the money that's coming for defence, the money on this, money on that. I don't know where the hell all this money is coming from, because we can't borrow anymore. I mean, we spend more, and I think the defence budget and the education budget combined don't touch the size of the amount of we're spending on interest alone on our debts. Not paying off our debts, just the interest, guys. So I don't know where that money's coming from, unless we're going to be seeing massive tax rises in the autumn, little sneaky ones like the national insurance hike for employers. Well, we're going to be hearing about all of that a little bit later. We've got PMQs at midday, and at 12:30 Rachel Reeves will stand up for about 45 minutes. It's going to be a long 45 minutes, folks, but don't worry, we won't take that bit live. We'll have Peter Cardwell in the studio to give analysis as it happens. We'll bring you everything as it happens. But I want to know, as Rachel Reeves is going to say, she's fixed the foundations of the economy, and they're going to be spending all this money, and no one has a clue how they're going to be actually finding the money for it, on the basis that everything was predicated on us having growth, and we ain't got growth, guys. What is your experience? Are you feeling that, yeah, things have turned a corner? I'm feeling confident. I mean, if you're a train driver, you probably feel that. If you're a resident doctor, you probably feel that. But what's your experience if you're on a small business? If you're looking for work right now, maybe you've got a young family, maybe you're a pensioner. I'd love to hear your experience. What is your experience? Do you feel that the foundations of the economy are fixed? Do you feel positive? Do you feel confident? Maybe one of those young people who I fear are all going to just sod off abroad because you don't feel that you have got a future here. I'd love to hear your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222. You can send us a message on X at talkTV. You can, of course, Get in touch with us on our YouTube page. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text cost 1 standard network rate message. We're going to be talking about, obviously, fixing the foundations and all that extra money. Also going to be talking about, I think, the insane decision by Angela Rayner to decriminalise rough sleeping. It's a 200-year-old law under the Vagrancy Act, and it's going to be repealed next spring. What could possibly go wrong? I didn't know that it was criminalised, really, on the basis of the number of heroin addicts who sleep rough in my local high street. But there we are. And the US, we're going to be talking about getting into a diplomatic spat with Britain after they criticised Britain, quite rightly, I think, for sanctioning 2 hard-right Israeli government ministers over their horrendous extreme language. But it's extremist language not about Gaza. It was about West Bank settlements. The US Secretary of State Marco Rubio said that the asset freezes and travel bans on Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich do not advance US-led efforts to achieve a ceasefire, bring all hostages home and end the war. Yet again, we're falling out with the American government. Is that a good idea? All that coming up, plenty more besides. Oh yeah, insane teaching union, the NEU, insisting that there is no legal or scientific definition of biological sex. These people must not be allowed near our children. I don't know how to stress that more strongly. Anyway, all that coming up, loads more besides. Delighted to say I'm joined by Claire Pearsall today, former Conservative government advisor. She joins us nearly always on a Wednesday. Very good morning to you.
Morning.
Now, normally you and I would chat for a little bit about all the big stories, and we're going to do that in a few moments, but delighted to say one of our many top guests joining us today is with us already, and he is Sir Ian Duncan Smith, Conservative MP and former Conservative Party leader as well. A very good morning to you, Sir Ian.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for joining us. Can I put the question to you that I'm putting to our audience today? Given that Chancellor H. Reeves announced the spending of all this money, God knows where it's coming from in terms of payment, but she's fixed the foundations of the economy. This, as we understand, 250,000 fewer jobs in the economy after that national insurance hike. What's your experience? Do you think we have fixed the economy?
It's almost risible, isn't it, really? That within months, not even just last year, the government was banging on about how the economy was in a terrible state. They've inherited it and they're having to make major changes and everything is all wrong. And then they get into trouble with their own backbenchers about the winter fuel cut, which was one of the stupidest political decisions I've ever come across. I mean, really stupid politically. Forget about the cost savings. Yeah. And now they've had to do a massive tire-screeching, road-marking U-turn in the street outside Parliament as they head now in the opposite direction. And their excuse at the dispatch box the other day was, well, actually, it was necessary then, but now the economy is on the right track.
And we've all felt the benefits of the massive change in the last few months.
It flowing down like mad. It's like a land of milk and honey. I mean, the thing about this is, I know all governments do this, and they could have...
Your lot did it too.
Yeah, all governments do it, I know. But when it comes to tire-screeching U-turns, this is a pretty solid tire-screeching U-turn of all tire-screeching U-turns in terms of your policy. You took away the winter fuel payments, and by the way, there's 250,000 pensioners who were eligible for winter fuel had to claim it as a result of this, who still haven't been paid it for last winter. I raised that in the House of Commons. I said, still haven't even paid anything yet to a load of people that should have done it. They were all eligible for it anyway.
And they were people, we knew there was something like 800,000 pensioners who were eligible for the pensioner tax credits and therefore for the winter fuel allowance, even when it was limited to everybody else. But they've never claimed it.
Pension credit, poorest pensioners, these are people that actually made a claim and still haven't been paid.
So I mean, everything. That's our first-class civil service for you, mate.
Well,
At it again. They're busy writing letters to the Foreign Secretary. They haven't got time to actually do their job.
They're busy trying to do
so the things are bad. We know they're bad. With the front page of the Mail today, spelling out a story, actually, we were talking in similar terms yesterday about the huge number of jobs that are just missing now. 250,000 jobs have gone since that tax-raising budget last autumn, where we saw that big hike on employers' national insurance, which was, I mean, everyone knows it was a breach of the manifesto commitment because it is a tax on employees because it gets passed on to them. But that has had a huge impact on businesses. People are not hiring, people are firing, people are not promoting, they're not expanding. That has had a massive impact. So what I don't understand is, where are we getting all the money from? Because everything was always predicated on growth. And if you haven't got people hiring new people and producing more, you haven't got growth. So where is all the money coming from for billions more for defence? And we're told, 30 billion more for health, 39 billion, OK, it's over 10 years, 34 billion a year for building more social homes. We've got, we've got all this money for things like, Sizewell C and things. Where is all that money coming from?
Well, this is a process. So the spending review and the budget. So what we have here is two separations. And this is an announcement about spending. In the autumn, they will have to be announcing how they're paying for all that spending. So the agreements will have been done behind closed doors, and they will brief out, I suspect, some of that. But what actually happens now is the screw gets tightened even further later in the year with all the departments. So whatever they've agreed so far, they'll be returning to them, and that's where the big announcements will be. And the honest truth, IFS has said it, everybody said it, there is a swathe of tax rises that are going to have to come down the pipeline because they said they're not going to borrow, so they have to raise the money somewhere.
We can't borrow anymore. We've already got higher payment on our interests than we had after the Liz Truss budget, for goodness sake.
I know. So the whole point is, we know the government is going to have to raise this money. We know that the one door that is still open to them, because she set these restrictions on herself about borrowing, that has to be on the basis that they will now tax. They will tax the British public dramatically. They'll make up all sorts of considerations about who they're going to miss out. But the reality is, they broke their promise, as you said earlier on, about national insurance. They said, it's not on employees. Well, anything you put on a business is on employees because businesses are not hiring now. Yeah. And the worst bit about it is people who are in part-time jobs, working for charities too, they've had to be got rid of. Yeah. And so the taxes now will hit everybody hard. This is not a budget for growth. This is a budget for stasis at best, and probably a depression.
You mentioned that the winter fuel cut, and again, that has been catastrophically politically unpopular and achieved no purpose whatsoever. The two-child benefit cap, there's a lot of pressure on the government from Labour backbenchers, and interesting now from Reform, I think quite wrongly from Nigel Farage, that we shouldn't, arguing that you shouldn't get rid of the two-child benefit cap. Should we get rid of it or not? You were Work and Pension Secretary for many years. You actually have a record of getting people who've got, living in poverty, their children in poverty, back into work, some for the first time, as a result of changes to benefits that you made, which, of course, we know gets people out of poverty. But should there be a two-child benefit cap?
Well, I left in 2016. It actually came in 2017, but it was a plan that we had worked on. And the real principal reason was, what was happening was people who were in work make choices. They make choices about their income, what they can afford, whether they're going to have children, not have children, have more children. These are the normal decisions that most people make. The problem is, if you have a group of people that are not having to make that decision, it makes them much more difficult to get into work because the decisions they take will not be work-related. Yep. So the principle behind all of this was, look, let's make it an even playing field so that everybody is making the same choices, which means going back into work becomes a much easier process. And it seems to me to be reasonable. That's the principle behind it. Yeah, it does save money. But if we look very carefully at the government, they'll have then made 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. So they get rid of the winter fuel payment, which I thought at the time was done very stupidly, but now they've gone back on it. They're going to try and seek, they've got this money already in the bank in terms of the two-child limit. Now they're going to probably get rid of all or some of it or whatever. And that means instead of going forward in terms of reducing spending, they've actually been going backwards in reducing spending, which means her problem with this spending programme means it just adds to all the problems she's got already.
Exactly. I mean, you're not going to sort the budget out, and you're simply not going to sort out growth if you've still got a massive, massive load of spending on welfare for able-bodied people of working age. Can I also ask you about rough sleepers? Angela Rayner, the Housing Secretary, is going to, by next spring, decriminalise rough sleeping. It's been a criminal offence since 1824, under the Vagrancy Act, have rough sleepers. Apparently they say this is a terrible, obviously by definition, anyone who's sleeping rough in the street is someone who we need to help. Obviously, we should do that. I'm not a fan of people giving someone a couple of quid or a coffee, they're sleeping on the street. You're better off giving a decent sum of money to a housing charity, to an outreach organisation that will try and help those people and get them off the street. But certainly around my way, it's a growing issue where I live in London, of heroin addicts sleeping on the street, camping in doorways, shops begging the police to remove them from their doorways so they can enter their premises. Police already doing nothing. I mean, it's already been decriminalised, hasn't it?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, I didn't think there was a criminal charge attached to it.
It's just never enough. It's like shoplifting. It's basically legal.
Well, yeah, and I don't call anybody being prosecuted. Half the time they wouldn't know they're being prosecuted anyway.
Yeah.
But the reality is that there are... So from that standpoint, the key thing is get them off the streets.
Yeah.
What is she going to do about getting them off the streets? Because they're everywhere now. They're in the tube station doorways.
Yep.
You know, and they all head for London massively,
Yep.
and then it becomes a major London problem.
They're mostly outside my local Waitrose for some reason. Apparently Waitrose customers are a soft touch.
I know, but you're very popular personally, and I think they're gravitating to your area for reasons, you know, the popularity.
It's when you start knowing all their names, you know something's going wrong, you know.
I know. But the main point is there is an area which, if we're on this point, I do think needs sorting. I've had a problem with people occupying people's houses, squatting, breaking in, and then staying there.
Yeah.
And although we discovered that there is a penalty of up to 6 months if they do this in terms of going to prison, what happens is it's not within the criminal code. So it's in civil law. So the police have an opt-out of doing absolutely nothing about squatters.
Extraordinary.
Or a woman, in my case, comes back home to find she hasn't got a home anymore and has to go staying with other people.
I used to work in the East End. I know people. Can I help?
Well, I have to tell you, there's a lot of known people heading for this location. And the problem we've got is that, therefore, this is a mess. Yeah. I mean, occupying a house, and it turns out they're probably migrants, I'm not sure, that's what I was told, but I may be wrong. But occupying a house like that, and some poor person wants to go back home and they live in it, you know, that should be instantaneous, get rid of them.
Yes, police get straight in. But again, we have the same thing, don't we, with
handcuffs. They can't do anything.
With Romany gypsies turning up and just taking over a field and setting up camp. I mean, you can't leave your bins out a day late and you might get fined. But no, let me park my caravan wherever I feel like it. Can I ask you about one other story related to housing? And this is an analysis by the Telegraph of foreign-born heads of households, so you know the adults in household in London, cost Britain some £3.6 billion a year in discounted rent. So these are households that benefit from cheap social rents, which are a lot less, I mean, certainly particularly in the capital city where rents are sky high, than the private sector, looking at savings of 11.5 grand a year in rent. But nearly half of all social housing in London, 48%, is occupied by one of the adults is foreign-born. That's data from the 2021 census showing, and basically well over the national average, which is around 19%. But basically, they're getting discounted rents, not born here, but we're told that immigration is a fantastic boon to our economy all the time. And yet, again and again, more stats are coming out showing a huge number of people who come to this country, whether to work or not, aren't actually making a net contribution. If you need social housing, you are not making a net contribution to our economy, are you?
No, and of course statements like the economy grows because of migration are statements made by people who never have to pick up the pieces that lie around their areas, and it's invariably in particular areas that you see this. And so, of course, GDP goes up if you have more people here, because if more people here, your economy is going to grow by the very nature that they will be spending money, etc. The question is really, all this point, how many of them are being housed in terms of social tenants on arrival? How much of that is therefore paid by those who are in work, those who are in marginal jobs, sometimes those who can't get jobs because they're being underbid
Yep.
by others who've walked through the door. They don't have housing, they don't have families, etc. And we're bringing in a medium-sized city every year. And I have to tell you, from my own standpoint, from the government, our biggest failing we had was failing to get legal migration under control, let alone illegal migration, because the legal migration that you're really talking about with the large numbers that are coming through. And that has to be a priority for this government, for any government. We have to now recognise there is a limit to the number of people that a country this size can take every year.
Absolutely. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what the Prime Minister, whether Tory or Labour or any other party thinks, if you're not going to get on top of that, the voters aren't going to vote you out. It is really that simple. Voters have had enough. So Ian Duncan Smith, great to talk to you. Covered a lot of ground there. Conservative MP, former Conservative Party leader as well. Claire Pearsall's still with me. Just a brief reaction to that. We'll go to a break and we'll have a little bit more of a chat. But I mean, it doesn't feel good. I mean, the weather's pretty gloomy. It's going to be like 24 degrees where we are later in the day. It doesn't feel like that right now, looking out the window. We always talk about how the mood of the nation is different when it's nice weather and things. But I've got to be honest with you, sometimes I feel a little bit sorry for Rachel Reeves because she's got a duff hand, but my God, she's making it duffer.
Well, she is, and that's the point. She's making it worse, and the decisions that you're U-turning on are going to cost enormous amounts of money. So you can't say that you're saving money on one hand whilst then having to spend it on the other hand to correct the mistake you made.
I mean, I'm in favour of all this big spending on things like defence. We need to spend it better. I'm in favour of building nuclear reactors. There's a load of stuff that I really want us to be spending money on.
But those things are a capital expenditure. It's very, very different, and most people would support that because you want decent transport, you want decent electricity lines put in.
I'd like to be able to keep the lights on. I'm old-fashioned like that.
I know, so much you want in life is just to have the lights on and have your kettle boiling.
If you're going to put taxes up, you're not going to have a growing. There's no such thing as an economy that grows that has high taxes.
High taxation.
There's no such thing as an economy that boosts growth when you tax businesses. You're not going to encourage people to grow their business if you make it more expensive to employ each person. It's just that simple. And why energy costs are so high. And they're putting everything. There's going to be a green revolution. It's not going to be a green revolution. And there's going to be this AI revolution. You're not going to have the AI revolution in the UK. You're not going to have a big AI industry when you've got energy prices that are 4 times that they are in America. End of. Nothing to discuss.
Yeah, absolutely. The only green revolution we've got are those of us who go, it's an absolute nonsense. I want a revolution against it because it's costing us more money and isn't going to solve a problem.
Bring on the revolution, guys. Yeah, absolutely. At 10:22 is the time. More from Claire. Lots of calls already coming. Give us a call. I want to know, what is your experience fixing the foundations? Everything's fine. What do you want to hear from the Chancellor? What could she do today? What could she announce today that would be good news to you? I'd love to hear from you on that. Don't forget, by the way, if you miss any part of the show, you can find our YouTube page. I've got a YouTube page and it's very exciting. It is called, this is genius, we literally had a whole consultant company in. We paid them millions to come up with this. It's called the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show, and it's on YouTube. I know, it's brilliant. These people are geniuses. If you hit subscribe, you won't miss a thing. 10:22 is the time. This is Talk.
They lie and they lie and they lie. This is unprecedented, the amount of lying this government's doing.
Yes, though you could, in fairness, Kev, you could argue that the Conservative government set a bit of a precedent for the whole thing, with Boris and so on. But yes, you're right. I mean, certainly on domestic issues, Sir Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves have been pretty disgraceful. And Reeves particularly, there hasn't been you will never get a word of contrition out of that awful woman. She will never say, yes, my first budget wrecked what was becoming a promising economy. And that's the truth.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. 10:25 is the time. I was showing a little bit topsy-turvy this way around. We've spoken to Ian Duncan Smith. Get a bit of time with Claire Pearson now before we go to your calls on 0344 499 1000. Just basically want to know, Rachel Reeves fixing the foundations of the economy as she announced a spending review in just about 2 hours' time. What's your experience? Do you feel the economy's fixed? Business going well? Got a job? Had that big pay rise? Prices going down in the supermarket? Rent going down? Energy bills going down? Yeah? Oh, yeah, we're all feeling that, aren't we? I'd love to hear from you. Claire, there is no doubt at all that this is a difficult spending review. There isn't any money. There's massive debt. There's a possible war. We've got all the pressure on defence spending. That alone dwarfs everything. There is this fiscal headroom. There isn't any. We don't have any money.
No, we don't. But there are sort of two different pots of money as well, just to confuse matters, because you've got the capital expenditure on big infrastructure projects, which will mainly be borrowing. Mm-hmm. So that is money one side. I think what most people are going to notice is how it's affecting them in their pocket. How much is their gas and electricity bill, their water bill, their council tax, all of those kind of things compared to their wages, it adds up. So to say that, she's boosting the economy, fix the foundations, with what? Some sticky back plastic and some paper
they can't even fix the potholes. Do you know what I mean? That would be good. That's the thing. It's just you just walk around. I am so, again, I live in a nice area. Okay? I pay good money to live in a nice area, and I can just see it just sort of crumbling around. Yeah. And just things like, there was a bench and the bench broke, and they just put some barriers around it, and a month later it's still sitting there broken. There's people leave their rubbish in the street. They say they're a heroin addict, and we know they're heroin addicts. People know who they are. The shoplifting, the guy's begging outside, and one of them, again, he literally just commutes to beg. I mean, it's just everything. Everything is just feeling tired. There's distrust on the street. There's just a general feeling that things are not heading in the right direction. And when you see that news, 250,000 jobs have gone since that tax-raising budget just in the autumn. Mm-hmm. Again, and we discussed this on the show yesterday, and we discuss it an awful lot. If you've got people in government who've never run a private business, never worked at a private business, they do not understand how people make these decisions, because there's always more money. What do you care about? Well, you don't care about productivity in the public sector. If there's no one loses out if you just spend all your money and don't get anything done.
Well, this is it. And what people care about, the fact is that hospitality has been hit so enormously. Restaurants are closing down, pubs. The demise of the village pub, and indeed sort of pubs around major cities, is frightening.
And there's such an important hub. Yeah, but you've got to remember, they disapprove. They're a bit prohibitionist and banning nanny statey. Yeah. And they don't like people meeting up and having a nice time. They're all a bit judgy. They don't mind doing it in Strangers Bar on the Commons, where they've got subsidised beds themselves.
Absolutely.
That's okay. But pubs are a really important part. Yeah. I remember during lockdown, someone called in, and it's such a vivid memory to me, and talking about there's a man in their local area, and he basically would ride the bus all day, and he had pensioners pass. But he used to be sitting in the pub. He was one of those guys, the doors open, and he'd have his half pint, but he was there for company. Yes. And I worked in pubs where your regulars, and they wanted their own tankard, but they were there for company. They lived alone. Exactly. But this guy would basically get on the bus in the morning, and the bus was warm, so he could save on. And he would get on the bus, and he would just sit on the bus going backwards and forwards all day, so he could be around people broke my heart.
And it does, and we've all come across people in pubs, and all they want is to have a chat. And the majority of them, it's really interesting actually to understand that somebody is so lonely at home, and you might be the only person that they speak to that entire day.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's like the people who go wait in the supermarket queue as opposed to splash. I mean, I mostly want people not to talk to me.
Yes.
Including at home. Let's also talk about what's been going on in Ballymena in Northern Ireland. Lots of focus on these riots in Los Angeles, but police clashing with, we're told, racist rioters, we're told, in Ballymena. Fires being set, I mean, fireworks, some brick and goodness knows. No excuse whatsoever for this, but it's all based on two youths who needed Romanian translators to them in court, who have been charged with sex assault on a 14-year-old girl. Another 28-year-old man has also been arrested, interviewed and released. But people are very angry. There's been a lot of concern about illegal migration to Northern Ireland and Ireland, Southern Republic of Ireland as well. It's been a massive issue in the last couple of years. The police and politicians dismissing these as racist jobs. I mean, a member of my own family is Romanian. I mean, largely white people. I'm not quite sure how white people are being racist against white people. People objecting to people from other cultures coming to their country, and the alleged, I have to say at this point, an alleged sexual assault on a teenage girl. I think people are understandably angry. It doesn't justify riots, but again, it's that thing. You're all racist. Are they what's racist about it?
But that's just the easiest option for politicians. And what they fail to understand is that people are angry because they feel like they're being done over, they're not being heard, they're not being taken seriously with their concerns, and they're just told that they're far-right racists and they need to pipe down at the back. Yeah. When will governments understand that you cannot have this situation happening?
Absolutely.
With all of this immigration happening, people coming in.
They're not putting up with it anymore. They're not putting up with it anymore.
No, they're not.
No, let's go to a quick call before we get to the bottom of the hour. We're going to be talking to economist Liam Halligan to get his take on what we're going to hear today. Let's go to Tracy. She's on the line from Burton-on-Trent. Tracy, how are you feeling? What's your experience? Hello, good morning. Can you hear me, my darling?
Hello, Julia.
Hello. Morning.
Hello. Right, Julia, this is a bit of a shock for you, OK? And it probably proves why we should get rid of this government, OK? Personally, for me, I'm actually financially better off under Labour because of their dreadful policies, and I'll explain why. Yeah. OK, I was an early adopter of solar panels, so I have a feed-in tariff which is index-linked, and it goes up every year in line with inflation.
But your energy costs haven't gone up, basically.
Yeah, well, no. Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I haven't paid for gas and electricity with the money I get off my feed-in tariff for the past 12 years.
Good for you.
Very nice. And it's lovely, OK? That's fine, OK? I have two small buy-to-lets, and because of obviously the huge rise in immigrant numbers, the rents have absolutely gone through the roof in my local area. Now, I am about 200 quid below for my lovely tenants what it should be, what I could
You're doing the market rent,
but I've got lovely tenants. And so I only put it up when my sort of underlying costs go up. Yeah. OK. Yep. Petrol's gone down round here to £1.25 a litre. My car
Claire's looking like what?
Yeah. My car insurance is 2/3 of what it was last year.
Some insurance has gone down, hasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's gone down. Now, I have had some increases. Food has gone up a little. Food has gone up, obviously. My council tax went up 5%. But overall, OK, I'm actually better off. And Yeah, and
but you don't think you should be? It's because it's for the wrong reasons.
No, because it's the wrong reasons. For me, it's very nice that I get a feed-in tariff and it's all down to sort of net zero. But actually, it's not right. And what I'm actually saying, I am just one little tiny small person, but there are a lot of corporations out there, there's a lot of people out there making huge amounts of money because of what this Labour government...
Absolutely. Tracy, that's a fascinating call. I so appreciate that. Thank you. I'm going to have to go to a break. I'm really late for it, but thank you. That was a really good call. Love to hear your reaction to what she had to say. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk, Home of Common Sense.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On your smart speaker. On your smart TV. And on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. Let's get straight to our next guest. Economist and Telegraph columnist Liam Halligan joins us to talk about, well, what we can hear and expect to hear from the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, when she stands up in about 2 hours' time. A very good morning to you, Liam.
Morning, Julia.
Thank you very much for joining us. Well, look, I mean, she's going to say, we're pretty sure, I've fixed the foundations of the economy and everything's absolutely fine. And then she's going to announce a heap load of spending for the government in terms of, like, well, the next 3 or 4 years. NHS, defence, we're told, housing are all going to do well, maybe schools as well. Can I just ask, where the hell is all that money coming from?
Well, she's going to do what old Labour always does. She's going to borrow it and cross her fingers. And that's really worrying. I think this Chancellor's completely out of her depth. I think she has no understanding of business or financial markets. And I don't think there's anyone in number 10 who has a sophisticated understanding either. When you and I were cub reporters in Westminster, Julia, back in the late 90s, we were there at the zenith of New Labour. The thing about New Labour, whatever you think about them, Tony Blair in particular always made sure there were people around when the big decisions were made who actually really understand financial markets.
And Gordon Brown did. There was some very, you might disagree with a lot of things, but they were a very clever bunch of people.
I don't agree with that. I don't think Gordon Brown had a sophisticated idea of markets. I think he pushed back all the time against Blair. There were huge tensions between his economic advisors and Brown personally. But we're now in a situation where government borrowing costs are way above where they were at the time of the Liz Truss mini-budget crisis. That's why I think it's dangerous to borrow more. And the question I'm asking in the run-up to this spending statement, and I'm looking at all the main parties, Labour and the Tories, and indeed Reform, I'm asking, Julia, who's standing up for reality?
Exactly.
The reality is that we simply cannot afford to keep borrowing and spending the way we are, and the political class, and I'm afraid the media class too, need to call this out. And
but they don't, and you know they don't, because the media class, of which we are fully signed up members, but are often castigated for speaking up, going, "Do you think this is a good idea?" They will applaud anything like more money going to, benefit claimant this and this person, and to pensioners and to this, and more money for housing, more money for defence, more money for everything, and any cuts at all. Let's find someone who's a victim. There is never, ever, ever a debate, a proper, sensible debate on, in most newspapers, certainly on the BBC, about can we afford any of this? Can we? They might touch the sides a bit on welfare dependency, but they're a bit uncomfortable about it. But they don't talk about the fact that we are spending more servicing our debt, not paying off our debt, servicing our debt in this country than we're spending on defence and education combined. That is not sustainable, as I'm sure Elon Musk would agree, as he pointed out in the American economy as well. It's just not sustainable forever.
No, I think that's true. We spend £105 billion a year on debt service. That was the estimate back in the spring. That estimate will have since gone up because the gilt yield has gone up. The gilt yield being the price that the government has to pay to borrow, a price that's been going up, even though the Bank of England's been lowering interest rates. So that £105 billion is, well, defence is £57 billion, so it's almost double defence. As you say, defence and education, or defence and schools combined, is what we're talking about. It's an absolutely huge amount of money. And where is the morality, Julia, in our generation being fiscally incontinent to the extent that we're loading all those liabilities on our respective kids' generation?
Because it's going to have to be paid for. The money doesn't just disappear. We're not going to default. We can't be like, a banana republic and just go, do you know what? We're just not going to pay any of our debts and we're starting again from scratch. We're a grown-up country. We can't do that. But this is the thing. So how does it all work out? Because I'm sure you would agree with me that you actually support some of the things that are being spent. You know, we do need to build, reservoirs and nuclear reactors. We do need more social housing stock. A lot of it was sold off. There are people who will never be able to afford to rent in the private sector. We're paying a fortune for housing benefit in the private sector. More social housing may long term be a boon. There are some things we do need to spend money on long term, but where have you got most of your criticism in terms of what we know has already been announced and what we expect to be announced? What are the things that you would query that Rachel Reeves is going to do?
Yeah, sure, we need to spend a lot more money on social housing. I wrote a whole book on that called Home Truths.
You did.
The alternative to that is what we're currently doing, which is spending 30 billion quid a year on a housing benefit, giving often not particularly decent landlords lots of state money to house people who should otherwise be in. I think there are things we need to spend on infrastructure and so on. But when the sickness and health related benefits bill is going up from 50 to almost 80 billion over one parliament, and we talk about cuts, but actually what we mean, and this is the whole of the media class, the whole of the political class, what we actually mean is a slowdown in the rate of increase. And that slowdown in the rate of increase of welfare spending is then kiboshed by a prime minister. The moment his deputy prime minister, flashes a little bit of leg to the Labour left, that is why the bond markets are saying, are these guys serious? I'm one of the very few people with a national media platform who actually talks to people who trade bonds, because they ring me up and I.
And we might not want anything that happens in our economy or our politics to be decided by the people who trade bonds. But unfortunately, we don't get to make that decision. They do get to make those decisions about our economy.
The facts of life are governed by mathematics, and no amount of spin and no amount of political drama and tribalism can use mathematics. And the mathematics of this situation is that the tax take is already at a 70-year high. The more Labour puts up tax rates, the more they stymie growth. When you stymie growth, you then lower the amount of tax revenues that you get. We see that. She's put up capital gains tax, less capital gains tax revenue. She's put VAT on private schools, less money from private schools because they've got fewer people attending. She's putting up all kinds of tax rates, and tax revenues are going down. Labour needs to get beyond ideology. And they need to get real. And the reality is that we're now at a point where if you keep raising tax rates, you are simply going to drive the economy off a cliff, because there'll be absolutely no growth. So fiscal policy will be completely upended. There will be...
And everything, the entire basis of their argument is that we're going to drive all these extra spending and dealing with the economy through growth. But we've seen that massive hit to growth from the last budget, and particularly the tax on jobs. What do you make of that in terms of the national insurance? I mean, again, if she was gonna U-turn on any policy, I would say U-turn on the employer hike on national insurance. But when we get to the autumn budget, lots of people are saying, you've got the Tories, some else tried and otherwise saying, look, this has all got to be paid for. Even though Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer got elected, basically, that we're not going to raise taxes on working people, so it's national insurance. Again, they've lied on that, because employer national insurance is a tax on working people, on VAT and income tax. If they are not going to renege on those plans, those pledges, what taxes are going to go up and by how much?
Well, they're going to try and come after property. I think they're going to come after businesses. Look, we're looking at pictures now for people watching rather than just listening to us. Rachel Reeves and her Treasury team, not a single one of those people has ever actually employed a person. Most of them have just suckled on the teat of the state. They don't understand what it is to run a business. They don't understand what it is to make payroll. And of course, as you were discussing with Claire earlier before I came on, the employment numbers are absolutely alarming. We've seen employment hiring fall pretty much every single month since Labour took office, and that is only going to increase because these national insurance rises, a massive inflation busting pay rise in the minimum wage, they are now hitting businesses. And it's small and medium-sized enterprises that suffer most.
Always.
Before, Julia, you should get your put your big radar on the employment rights bill. I know you've talked about it's going through the Lords. That is an absolute disaster. It's not just about, unfair dismissal rights literally from day one. It's not just about endless leave for endless reasons for employees. It's also about employees paying money to the Labour Party, unless they opt out of doing that. It's about reversal of those trade union reforms of the 1980s. It's about making it much, much easier for trade unions to call strikes, even when employees may not want that.
Even when the majority of the employees. No, it is absolutely true on so many different measures. Can I just ask you, just finally, just in one sentence, if you were in charge today, you were in the Treasury, what would you announce?
I would announce. I wouldn't announce it off the bat. You have to roll the pitch. You have to prepare people for something.
Yes, Liz Truss, that's what you need to do. Yes.
And you need to work with the OBR, which she didn't, and that was a major, major error on her part, which I've discussed with her at great length, privately and publicly. I would, having prepared the ground, I would announce to the world that Britain is open for business, and I would begin with a cut in the rate of corporation tax, a down payment on a smaller state in this country. And, I talk a lot about something called the Laffer curve, the idea that when you lower tax rates, you actually get more tax revenue. Yeah. Corporation tax in this country from 2010 to 2019 is a perfect example, Julia, of the Laffer curve in action, because the Tories lowered the rate of corporation tax from 27 to 19, and the revenues that they got during that period from corporation tax went up, not only in absolute terms, but as a share of GDP, and they went up.
Okay. I know some people dispute and say there were other factors also involved, but we'll have to leave it there. I know you'll be watching it at 12:30 when everyone's got to try and stay awake for 45 minutes. Liam Halligan, I'm sure, will be able to make some more sense of it than most of us. Really appreciate you joining us. Economist, also columnist at The Telegraph, Liam Halligan. He knows his potatoes. Claire Pearson, your reaction to what he had to say?
Yeah, he does know his potatoes, and I'd like him there as Chancellor in any government that we... Yeah, absolutely, he would. He knows his stuff. He doesn't mince his words, and it's very, very sensible.
And again, I'd really like...
tax.
Yeah, I also, when ideology meets reality always wins, guys. It really does. 10:47 is the time. We're going to be talking to Jonathan Sachadoti about those Israeli sanctions, because a bit more virtue signalling and posturing from David Lammy, our Foreign Secretary, but it's got us into hot water, not just with the Israelis, but also with the American government. We'll talk about that up next. This is Talk.
Really interesting. He said the biggest success of the British state over the last few years has been education. Education standards now in this country are far, far higher than they were even in the 90s, and that is because There's been a consistent policy. Blair set up academies, Gove put the rocket boosters under them. They've been continued through 14 years of Tory government, and they're just about surviving Bridget Phillipson. But that is because there is a single line there of policy. That is one thing you can see, because there have been consistency. Consistency in policy making is so important, because there's been so much chopping and changing of not just personalities, of directions, and that's the problem.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to the show. This is Talk, the home of common sense. 10:51 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Claire Pearsall's here. Get her thoughts on what my next guest has to say. The US Secretary of State Marco Rubio has, made his displeasure very, very widely known after the UK decided to issue sanctions on two members of the Israeli cabinet over words they have said, not initially about Gaza, but about West Bank settlers. The UK, of course, on behalf, of the UK, our good friend, Foreign Secretary David Lammy, has frozen the assets and put travel bans on Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich, two of the most senior ministers in Benjamin Netanyahu's government, very much on the hard right, and they're accused of fueling attacks by settlers on Palestinian communities. David Lammy said they had incited extremist violence and serious abuses of Palestinian human rights, and the sanctions would hold those responsible to account. Israel made it clear they're not happy, but Marco Rubio points out this doesn't do anything to actually promote peace. Let's talk to Jonathan Sacerdoti, writer and broadcaster, about that. Jonathan, was it right for David Lammy to put those sanctions and travel bans on those two ministers?
I think those UK sanctions on the two Israeli ministers are really a grave strategic and moral error. And I think that's because it's not principled at all. It's some sort of partisan posturing, which is driven clearly by Labour's domestic politics, not by Britain's national interests. And I think that it's a dangerous double standard. It's not what they do to other countries. It emboldens terrorists and it undermines our allies. Israel is meant to be a strong ally of the UK at its moment of need during this existential war that it's fighting and doing quite well in, one must say. Britain is trying to throw it under the bus before it gets to finish off the job properly.
Well, indeed, as you say, I certainly agree with you. It is partisan posturing and it's driven by national politics rather than anything else. And getting a nice little round of applause from people waving the Palestinian flags and Labour backbenchers. But at the end of the day, it doesn't achieve anything. It doesn't actually make any difference to anything. Those two ministers, I mean, they're not even very popular in Israel, are they not? I don't think they're even very popular within the cabinet. We know that the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, has had to put together a coalition. His coalition could fall at any time, could even, who knows, today. It could fall at any time if these ministers leave his government. And so, that's what happens when you have coalition governments. But it doesn't serve any purpose. It's not going to change Israeli policy. I'm sure it's not going to change the minds of these two ministers, with whom I do disagree quite fundamentally when it comes to the West Bank settlements. And at a time when, I say, our only proper real ally as a democratic state in the Middle East is under so much pressure and fighting a war in Gaza.
Well, just in case people listening or watching don't know how Israeli politics works, you're exactly right that Israel is always pretty much governed by coalitions. We in the UK aren't. And so these two figures actually represent a very small part of the democratic vote, but they end up holding quite a bit of power because they hold together the coalition. But Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich are not the Prime Minister. They don't even really have much of a say in the actual war cabinet and how Israel is conducting the war. And so making them the bogeyman, I think, is bizarre. But on the other hand, maybe Benjamin Netanyahu, who is a mainstream, very popular politician in Israel. I mean, he's really held office as prime minister and in other major roles for decades. he perhaps gets a bit of the heat off him because they've got a new bogeyman. Often those in the West focus on him as some kind of disaster far-rightist when he's actually basically centre-right traditionally. And so maybe that's allowed him a bit of wriggle room. But I would also say that this ignores the Palestinian Authority's actions. For example, their pay-for-slay policy. They pay salaries to convicted terrorists. The more Israelis you've killed, the higher that salary. We don't see David Lammy saying anything about that or sanctioning anyone in that government, which isn't democratic as well. I mean, it's a would-be state, which is a tyranny run by people who were, if they were elected ever, it was a very, very long time ago, who are actively calling for and in effect, they are effectively calling for terrorism and killing and rewarding it with money. And yet David Lammy isn't sanctioning those people like Mahmoud Abbas. He's sanctioning members of the Israeli government, members of the Israeli cabinet.
I'm quite sure the Israeli government is far too sensible. They're fighting a war. They've got other things to deal with this. But do you think a lot of this, and I know, look, I read a lot of what you've been putting on social media and sort of criticisms of people in the media, including one of my former colleagues, Piers Morgan, as well. And I have to say, I fully agree with your criticisms of him in terms of his treatment of the rather brilliant Natasha Hausdorff. I think just shouting the word BS at someone when you've invited them on a show is perhaps an interesting technique in broadcasting. But you and I know also share a lot of criticism of the BBC in terms of their broadcasting. Is it not a part of the problem we've got? Is that I mean, I get lots of people I know in this country who had no real views on what was going on in the Middle East, are now violently anti-Israel, saying that Israel is committing a genocide, starving the people of Gaza, and doing terrible deeds that are totally unjustified, because they see reports in the BBC and elsewhere, they hear what the government says, and they believe that that is actually what is happening, despite all the evidence to the contrary.
Yes, I do think that's quite a big part of it. That's one part of it. Other parts, you mentioned Piers Morgan. You know, he called me a disingenuous twerp for daring to speak out against him hectoring and shouting expletives over Natasha Hausdorff, the international lawyer, when he invited her on his show. The thing about all of these people is partly it's influence of those falsities and lies that are being spread and unfortunately spread by mainstream media. But also there are other factors at play. I mean, when I say there's a double standard here, we don't see Britain putting similar sanctions on leading members of the Qatari government, but Qatar is funding Hamas for years.
We roll out the red carpet for them.
Exactly. Well, listen, but that we know why, because, you know, many people have commented that Piers Morgan recently had a trip to Qatar. Qatar owns 95% of the building I think you're sitting in, and much of the surrounding areas. You know, News UK
most of
is
London.
housed. Well, yeah, exactly. It's not something I'm alleging has influenced your coverage, but I am saying that, you know, the fact of the matter is when there's money involved, different people suddenly switch their values. And in this case, I think that David Lammy is forgetting that it's not all just about money. Sometimes there are principles and morals at play. And
I think it's more about people wanting to say the things that they think people will think they're a nice person for, as opposed to what they believe to be right. But I'm old-fashioned like that. Can we just talk about Greta Thunberg as well? She did her Freedom Flotilla with their symbolic amount of aid. Well, it was an aid ship, and then it turned out a couple of bags of flour, and it was a symbolic aid trip to get to Gaza. It didn't get into Gaza, got intercepted. She claimed yet again, not in a video before she was actually intercepted, but also afterwards at the airport, that she had been kidnapped by Israeli forces. She was deported. She agreed to be deported. A number of people on the flotilla, they're now having to it'll take a few days, but they will be deported. But she got diesel-powered yacht and then a plane home. I mean, no, her carbon footprint is, I'm very distressed by, will someone not think of the planet? But what do you make of her using the phrase, we were kidnapped?
How dare she? Is all I have to say about that. I mean, listen, this woman child saying kidnapped. I mean, let's not forget who's really been kidnapped here. Over 200 people were kidnapped from Israel by Hamas and other Palestinian terrorists on October the 7th, 2023. It's a long time ago. Over 50 still held in Gaza, many of them actually dead. This is horrific. So for this spoilt child to say that she has been kidnapped by the Israelis, when actually what they did is implement a fully legal naval blockade. The Palmer report in 2011 explained that this was legal. Israel's actions in intervening and this ridiculous floating photo op.
I've got about 3 seconds.
Legitimate.
Jonathan, I think we got the gist of that. Thank you so much, Jonathan Sajdotti, writer and broadcaster. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good morning. Welcome back to the show. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, it's fantastic to have your company. Don't forget, by the way, you can go to my YouTube page. Please do subscribe so you never miss a thing. It is called, you'll never guess this, it's called The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. And that's where you can find all of everything that you might have missed, all the good videos and all the good stuff is there. I mean, obviously, the full 3 hours, and certainly anything that involves Claire Pissell, who joins us today, former Conservative government advisor. We haven't had as much for you as we'd like normally because we've mixed the show a bit around today, but lots more to talk about, including what Chancellor Rachel Reeves is going to announce in about an hour and a half in her spending review. A lot of extra money. We know about defence and schools and the NHS and house building, but how are they going to pay for it? Because we're already borrowing 105, well, no, not borrowing 105 billion. We're paying interest of 105 billion a year to pay for all our borrowing. Can we put it up? So if we can't, then do taxes have to go up to pay for it this autumn? And what will that be? We're also going to be talking a bit more about what's been going on in the Northern Irish town of Ballymena, where we know 5 people have been arrested, 15 police officers injured in riots after a 14-year-old girl was allegedly sexually assaulted. 2 teenagers who needed Romanian translators, therefore one likely to think are from Romania and not native to Ballymena, have been charged with those crimes. We're also going to talk about the National Education Union. Whenever we do that, never a good sign. It is Britain's largest teaching union, but the NEU members have been told there is no legal or indeed scientific definition of biological sex. This is their teaching since the Supreme Court decision. These people really must be kept away from our children. They really, really must not be allowed anywhere near the next generation. They are a danger to our children. It is as simple as that. Do get in touch. Want to hear your thoughts on all of the big stories. Particularly want to hear from you with the Chancellor Rachel Reeves claiming we know she's going to do this today because she and Keir Starmer and all the other ministers who are trotted out on their behalf say this all the time. We've fixed the foundations of the economy. That's why they were able to do that U-turn on the winter fuel allowance. That's why they've got all this money for social house building and everything else. 30 billion for the NHS, we're told. Waiting list won't come down, but nevertheless they're going to get another 30 billion. What is your experience there? What is your experience of where we are in the economy? Interestingly, we had a call a little bit earlier, Tracy, who said actually she's better off now than she was a year ago, largely down to Labour policies. And she's not happy about it. She doesn't want to be better off because she thinks the policies are so bad. But give us a call, have your say, 0344 499 1000. You can text the word talk and your message to 87222. You can get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs 1 standard network rate message. Now, we didn't get a chance to talk to Claire about our conversation with Jonathan Sachdoti just before the top of the hour. I promise we will come to that in this section, though. But let's talk about the spending review, because we had a really interesting conversation with Liam Halligan, who's an economist. And basically, you know, we're not getting growth. We can't borrow anymore. Taxes already at a 70-year high. They already were under the Tories, and they've been put up even more. What do you expect we're going to hear, and how is it all going to be paid for?
Well, it's going to be paid for by more borrowing. I think that's the only way you can do this. We
can't borrow anymore because the interest rates will go up even more.
The Chancellor is doing the spend more, borrow more rhetoric that I did when I was in my 20s and didn't know any better and got a credit card for the first time.
Yes!
I thought I was rich, and she's doing this, but she's the Chancellor and should absolutely know better. But I've learned a lot from listening to Liam Halligan. He's explained economics in a way that I understand. And I think he's spot on with things like corporation tax. Yeah. The minute you start taxing businesses is where you see the problems start to creep in. Yeah. You reduce the corporation tax, and funnily enough, your receipts into the Treasury become higher.
He made a point about that. I've spoken to various people who point out that actually there were other things that were happening in the economy at the same time. There are lots of, like Margaret Thatcher, they get a lot of credit for a lot of things they do. And I think rightly, although I was not a fan at the time, I have to say. But actually there were a lot of it. You had the oil revenue tax receipt. There was a lot more money coming in that, but then on the corporation tax, it's amazing how many people I think of, well, that's those big rich people.
Precisely.
The corporation tax is just, it's sort of Elon Musk type people. No. Anyone who runs, your plumber who runs a one-man business, the local cleaning company, they run a one business. They're paying corporation tax on any profits.
They are, and you have to pay it. There is no way around it. So even if you employ 1 or 2 people, or you're a sole trader, you still have to pay that. You've still got to do tax return. You've still got all of the expenses that you have as a business. Now, how does that encourage you to grow? If you're a plumber, you might look to take on an apprentice, if that is going to be financially possible for you to do so. You make that difficult, then that plumber isn't going to take on an apprentice. You lose an opportunity for a young person, and there's no business growth going.
And they don't grow their economy. And again, things like that VAT threshold. You've also got, we know, £25 billion hike in the national insurance from employers. Now, even the Institute of Fiscal Studies, who are studiously neutral on these things, say that this was clearly a breach of what the government, the Labour Party said before they got into government. We will not raise taxes on working people, they said. We will not, they specifically said, we will not raise income tax, VAT or national insurance. They said, oh no, we meant national insurance for employees, not employers. But as we've seen, because we've got 250,000, a quarter of a million fewer jobs in the economy than a year ago. That's what the latest official stats say. It's not my opinion, that's what the stats say. Those jobs don't exist because we haven't got growth, and partly because we've had a tax on employing more people.
Yeah, we had a jobs tax, which is what it is. So they were very Weasley words with their, we're not going to raise taxes on working people. Well, yeah, but you have, because you've given it to businesses who have then laid off people. Unemployment's currently at 4.6%. I mean, that's ridiculous in this day and age that we've got unemployment
low compared to most of Europe.
Yes, it is, but for our country, this is not a good level to be at.
But why do we need to import all these people from abroad when we've got a load of unemployed people here? And by the way, those are just the ones who claim to be looking for a job. Because as we're always told, oh, no, all these people who are on sick benefits of some kind, they want to work. Do they? Because... I mean, and then,
theory.
By the way, and when I say that, I'm not talking about people who are genuinely sick. You're having cancer treatment. You're genuinely seriously disabled. You've got no one's talking about those people. That's what we have. That's what we have a welfare state for, because we're a civilised country. But we all know the people who could work.
Yes.
I've never been in a job where there aren't people who people who are off when they've got a sniffle.
Yes,
I mean, literally, we all know the Monday morning people. We know those people.
And the Thursday afternoon when they start to feel a little bit iffy, and then shocker, they're not in on a Friday.
Set it up. Can I give you a top tip? If you're going to be dodgy like that, always have to take 2 days. No one believes you. No one believes you if you just take the one day.
We've all come across it.
Never on a Monday. People never. Just some top tips for you if you're in your 20s and you want to do this. But you know what I hate, actually? It's really interesting. You hear adverts all the time on music radio where they're a lot of the adverts are joking about, how I can get off work and how I can pretend to be working from home, but I've actually got a cardboard cutout. They're mocking the whole, this celebration and mockery of the whole, we don't do any work thing.
Yeah.
This is not a good thing for our people, our country.
No, it's not. And it also puts the mockery on people that do actually work from home. I'm one of those people. And I do get a lot done. And I know that people have views on working from home.
Different kinds of jobs, I get that.
But there are different kinds of jobs. And you get that kind of mockery, which then leads to people not believing that it's any good. Everybody must be in the office.
But there are lots of people who swing They are.
There are people that swing the lead in the office.
Call. No, you're walking the dog.
Yeah.
How much is this meeting actually useful at any point? By the way, we need to stop all the Zoom calls, but there we are.
Yes, we do.
So what do you think about Angela Rayner, the Housing Secretary, Deputy Prime Minister, of course? She seems to have done better than a lot of other departments, which would normally be dwarfed by defence spending, NHS spending and the like. We know Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, is definitely not happy with her settlement. We could have some more police cuts. Brilliant, because, of course, crime has been solved. Basically, they're going to solve crime by making everything not a crime. If it's not a crime, then we've solved crime, you see. That's fine.
Everybody's happy.
Shoplifting's already not a crime. Rough sleeping's going to no longer be a crime, according to Angela Rayner. But Rachel Reeves is going to unveil a £39 billion housing boost. It's part of the spending review. It's actually over 10 years. Yeah. So it's basically £4 billion a year, which isn't quite... I don't understand why some things are announced over 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10 years. Just give me the number, what it is. She doesn't get to set what the spending is in the next Parliament, because she's probably not going to be... she's definitely not going to be the Chancellor in the next government. But do we need to be spending more money on social housing? Is that a good thing?
Yes, it is. OK, and this is the one thing that I do support because I don't think council houses should have been sold off. Now, it's a controversial policy, I know, but I do think that you need
people
social
bought
housing.
them, and if their family bought them, it changed their lives. But still.
Same here. But if you're not going to replace that stock, then those people coming through who've got a housing need aren't going to get it.
The councils were banned from doing that. They were banned by Margaret Thatcher from actually using that money. And it was blatant political,
Well, of course it was. And we
gerrymandering, really.
And looking back on it, it shouldn't have happened. But at the time, I mean, it was a wholly different time when you look at the 1980s and things were booming.
Yeah.
And people
so they got away with it.
You got away with it. You hid it under other things.
But we also didn't have the extra 10 million people in the country that we've got now, and with barely any extra housing. There's no doubt at all that Angela Rayner is already horribly behind on that 1.5 million houses that she thinks she's going to be. Now, Tories used to have, they had a pledge of 200,000 homes, I think, every year. Never met that. Hers is 250,000, is it?
Yeah, she won't
I'm
meet that.
trying to do the maths, isn't that? Yes.
She won't meet that either. And I think that,
and they won't be affordable.
They won't be affordable. And this is your problem because building companies don't want to build smaller properties. They don't want to build the social housing or 2 or 3 bedroom properties. They want the 5-bedroom luxury apartments.
Which sit empty, bought by Chinese and Saudi investors and lie empty.
They want those sort of luxury residential properties to be sold because it makes them more money. They don't want to build 1 or 2 bedroom flats or small 2-3 bedroom homes, starter home type places.
People want a home with a garden for their kids.
They do, but that's not what the building company is going to look at because those developers won't make cash.
What do you make of these stats showing, £3.8 billion being paid just in London alone to house foreigners in terms of social housing, so housing association, council housing, where they're getting reduced rents by saving tune of like 11.5 grand a year. Almost 50%, 48% of all properties, social housing in London, have a head of a household, an adult in that household, who is foreign born. Now, it just defies belief to me if we're constantly told that immigration is this wonderful boon to the economy. If people are such a boon to the economy, why are we having to give them subsidised housing?
But I think that's why we need to look at the benefit system and housing benefits. Those people could well be in work, but they're getting top up with universal
I'm so fed
credit.
up with the whole working poor thing.
Yeah,
there are
some.
You work 2 days a week. Yeah, but either way. But you're not going to be a net contributor. You may be doing useful work, but I'm sure we've got someone sitting on the dole queues here who should be doing that work instead. But the point is that they can't afford to pay them higher wages. No, but we're subsidising their housing.
Exactly, and I think that's what we need to look at, is how many people are we subsidising? What are we paying for exactly? Do they need to live in central London, for example?
Yeah. Oh my God! I mean, there's so many councils. We're told them that's ethnic cleansing or social cleansing or something. I don't know. If you move people out, I don't think you've got a right to live in Mayfair. I can't afford to live in Mayfair.
No, exactly. But there are other places in the country that are probably crying out for workers. Could spread around the country. You can say, right, do you know what? There is a job going here. There are more jobs, more opportunities. You'll need to move to this area. And people really don't like it when you have that conversation.
No, apart from the fact that people who pay their own way do that all the time.
Precisely,
they move for jobs all the time, don't they?
Yeah.
Can we come back to what we discussed we just had with Jonathan Sachs-Doherty about what's going on with Israel? David Lammy, he is always posturing. Everything he does is posturing. The Foreign Secretary announcing these sanctions on 2 senior ministers, security and defence ministers in the Israeli government. And this isn't over Gaza, interestingly, it's over what they've said about the settlements in the West Bank. Now, I think Israel is wrong to do these settlements in the West Bank. I completely understand the security concerns. However, there has been violence, there have been issues. These 2 ministers are not ministers I hold a candle for, I've got to be honest with you. But what the hell is the British government doing, sanctioning ministers in a allied government's, cabinet, when they're in the middle of a war? What the hell do we think we're doing?
Well, it's a foreign secretary who doesn't understand the role of diplomacy in these kind of options. No, I mean, I don't hold any candle to these 2 individuals either, and they are propping up Netanyahu's coalition cabinet, and unfortunately he has to have them there. But what's it got to do with us? What's been said and what's been done when there are worse atrocities that have taken place. And I think Jonathan said that. There are people who have committed worse crimes who have not been sanctioned or even mentioned in all of this. But then this is the same David Lammy that is currently over in Gibraltar, probably selling out to the EU, and that announcement will drop, funnily enough, when the spending review comes
exactly.
out.
I mean, Chagos Islands give away, Falkland, they give away all. It is quite bizarre. I mean, again, I genuinely think he's too stupid to be doing this job. I really, really have issues with David Lammy. Falling out also with the US making it really clear. I mean, one of the things Donald Trump is sound on, I remember discussing this with you even ahead of the election. I knew I'd want him in for the US. I think he's terrible on Ukraine. I'm hoping he's coming around to the fact that Vladimir Putin is making him look like an idiot. But on Ukraine, standing absolutely firm. And again, I just think, David Lammy, why are you not sanctioning members of governments, many other governments or leaders in other countries where the most outrageous abuses of human rights are taking place?
Well, this is it. And so we don't need to fall out with the US over this. If there is a hill to die on, this isn't it.
This is not the hill.
Okay,
and again, it will achieve nothing. It will achieve nothing. Been lots of focus on those riots in LA in the media, and we've actually got a curfew in a part of downtown LA now. It's fascinating. So, Gavin Newsom, the California government and the mayor basically, we don't need the National Guard that Donald Trump has sent in, but then imposing a curfew. I mean, I think people frankly have had enough of the riots. They've gone through enough with the BLM riots and the like. I have to say, I don't think people, it's left or right, most people feel quite strongly about not having riots on their streets. Send the police in is where people are. Remember the riots in London in 2011? We had our own set in Southport. Same playbook being used, interesting, in Ballymena in Northern Ireland. And we've had politicians referring to racist yobs because there's no excuse for lobbing fireworks or setting fire to things or bricks at police. Absolutely no. But this is all prompted by, there was a vigil after a 14-year-old girl was allegedly sexually assaulted. Two youngsters, two teenagers have appeared in court. They needed Romanian interpreters. I think we can safely say they're Romanian, not from Ballymena, otherwise they wouldn't need an interpreter. Would that be fair? I don't know. Was that racist? Let's double check with Ofcom. But let's try and put the facts together, shall we? But this. And then a 28-year-old man has also been questioned by the police related to this alleged attack. We then had a vigil that the people turned up to protest. We've had the second night now of violence, 5 arrests last night, 17 police injured. This is getting very angry. Now, we've seen protests on the streets in Northern Ireland and in the Republic of Ireland over the huge influx of migrants, illegal and otherwise. The Irish government's going, come on in, the water's lovely. And the Irish people go, don't sodding well think so. We're a tiny island and there's been a massive influx. What do you make of these riots? And do you think, frankly, this is just a taste of what we've got to come?
I think it is. And governments generally don't listen. People are angry. They're not being heard.
She worked in government.
Yeah, and the governments just like to bury their heads. And especially now that the rhetoric is, well, you're all horrible, heinously far right-wing, nasty individuals who are looking at this in the wrong way.
If you're lobbing bricks at the police, you're a wrong and you're a yobbo.
Oh, absolutely. But nobody disagrees with that.
An Irish person, presumably majority white, right, being upset about this attack. Romanians largely white. I'm not quite sure where the race comes in, but they were racist for voting for Brexit, so it's so difficult to keep up.
Exactly. Race doesn't come into this. There has allegedly been a sexual attack on a child, and people are rightly angry that their feelings are not being heard. They feel that governments are walking all over them. They're not taking into account what they as a local community want and need and feel like. They're not being heard, and this is what you get, and it will spread. And as we've seen in America with those riots over in California, spreading out to places like San Francisco, you can see that this is going to be a feature of this year.
Yeah.
You can see it starting to happen. It will come over here. We saw it last year with Southport. It only takes one particular episode and then people are angry and they're out on the streets. That's the only way they feel they can make their voice heard. They couldn't make their voice heard at the ballot box. The Labour government was voted in. They have proven not to listen, so people quite rightly want to be heard.
And government after government has been told, no thank you, we don't want this, and government after government in waiting has promised that they won't do it, and then they increase the numbers, legal and illegal, and again, and they lie to us about, we just talked about the economic benefits or not, or economic costs of mass migration, but also the impact on crime. Sweden, Austria, Germany, France, all seen really, really clear hikes in their violent and sexual crime rates, and the incidence of those crimes taking place by being carried out by people who are recent migrants, or particularly illegal migrants, is sky high. That is. Again, I've had an Ofcom complaint about pointing this out before, and I literally, here's the data. Sorry you didn't read it on the BBC website. They were too busy talking about Jews doing the wrong thing.
Exactly.
No, but that's the reality. I'm sorry you didn't read that because you can't be bothered to Google anything and actually read the actual official data in these countries, which is what I bothered to do. But this is what's happening, and it's happening in the streets of our country. I've talked to, again, so many young girls in their teenage years. I obviously got a teenage daughter. I talked to their friends. I talked to, the young women in this office, and the incidence of sexual harassment and potential sexual assault from largely men who speak with foreign accents.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with the colour, I don't know what, but speak with foreign accents to them, who pursue them, harass them, get into the car. A teenage girl was telling me about someone, literally a man, just going at 9 in the morning, opening the door, pulling up on an empty street, get into the car.
I mean, that's just...
How bloody terrifying is that? How many girls do it or get grabbed and pulled in?
And this is it, and it feels very reminiscent of growing up in the 1980s, where you were always told, you had the man coming up, do you want a sweetie little girl and get into my car, and it feels that we haven't moved on, and this is just replacing the Ford Cortina with some kind of electric car on the street. Same problem.
Well, I'm just saying, again, calling people who are rioting on the streets because they don't want this to be happening to teenage girls in their community. I think shouting racist at them, I'm not sure is going to be the solution to the problem. No. 11:24 is the time. Up next, we get to your messages coming in thick and fast. What is your experience when the Chancellor today, when she stands up in about an hour's time, she's going to say that they fix the foundations of the economy, which is why they can splurge all this spending. What do you expect all that spending will be funded by? Oh, taxes going up. Who do you like those taxes to be on? Is there anyone left? And what is your personal experience? Are you feeling that the foundations of the economy are fixed or not? Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
thing that disappoints me, not just about Ed, but Keir's been questioned on it as well, and I spoke about this with someone yesterday who from the Tory side. I think people would have a lot more respect for politicians if they said sorry sometimes and said, you know what, I called it wrong. I'm human, you know, we've got to do better. I'm really sorry. We were very lucky to have a very mild winter, by the way. Could have been miles worse, but I'm sorry for the fear and the whatever, and I've called this wrong, and we're going to put it right, and we're going to do it this way.
Harry Cole said last week to me, if you bleed for months, it's no good. You just come out there, put your hands up.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. Thank you very much, Steve, for joining us. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. 11:27 is the time. Let's get straight to your messages coming in thick and fast about her. Well, the Chancellor, she's fixed the foundations of the economy. Everything's absolutely fine. What is your experience? Biddy says, well, the Tories did mess up Britain to be fair to Labour. No, this is true. No, I'm with you. Although again, you've got to look at, they were dealing with austerity the first few years, and then they had the COVID. Labour would have had us in more lockdowns and handed more money out. Ukraine, Labour supported all the Ukraine policies as well, and the energy bailout. We'd have been exactly the same mess. Stanley says, working construction, I can safely say the start of a recession is coming. No new work starting. Companies buying work to keep going. Feels like 2008 all over again. There are certain sort of canary in the coal mine industries, aren't they? I tell you what, you really notice actually. I mean, say living in London, looking at the skyline outside the window, often you will just see like a sea of cranes. You think, oh, good God, this is so ugly. A sea of cranes is good. It means people are building. William says Reeves could be classified as a rogue builder with statements like that. Peter says, seriously, what planet do these people come from? Nigel calls her a deluded moron. I think he's calling Rachel. It might be me. The only thing she's fixed is the death of the economy. Ethan says this is almost North Korean levels of propaganda. And Andrew says 1 million more unemployed. Is that fixing the economy? At least they've decriminalised rough sleeping. That way we can all sleep in our tents. Well, at this rate, that's where we will be. Joy says her foundations are built on lies, quicksand, and have failing the UK economy further. Not feeling happy about that. Let's go to Andrew, who's on the line in Hertfordshire. Good morning to you, Andrew. What do you want to say?
Good morning, Julie. Good morning, Claire. Crackerjack of a show. You've covered off some really good points this morning. Rachel Reeves, Ian Duncan Smith said it. The reality of this is just an announcement. This is what we're going to do. Yeah. When it comes to the budget later in the year, she'll come out and say there's not enough money. And you had a brilliant tweet to you then. My mate, I have a drink with, he's a quantity surveyor. And he said the thing that drives the economy isn't building, it's demolition. And he said the demolition guys have been laying people off for 3 months.
Because you have to demolish things to build new things, yeah.
Yeah. So he said the economy is actually got designed in real stickiness now. And actually, the great tragedy in this is there's no savings. There's no civil servants being sacked. Nope. There's no reduction in benefits. Yep. There's nothing driving it forward. All she has to say is national insurance is now 5%. That's all she has to do. Yeah. That's all she has to do. But it's interesting, we are saving ourselves up for a summer of massive discontent. And my thoughts this morning are with that young girl in Northern Ireland. My God, once again, it's women that bear the brunt of the horrific policies of this government.
This is so true. Andrew, thank you very much. That's a fantastic call. Claire, I mean, it makes an interesting point about demolition. There are certain just industries where you can see it, where, again, we've seen, what's happened to pubs, what's happened to, it's incredible. I mean, the restaurants, I mean, again, I live in the capital city, restaurants closing at, literally closing at 10, not last orders for your starter, closing at, just, you can just feel people are saving money, people are being careful, people are worried. Yeah. And they're doing that because they know that they are poorer, they're not spending money, and then there's business in this. Yeah. And you go into that downward spiral, but of course everything that the Labour Party want to do is predicated on growth.
Well, that's right. Speaking to friends of mine who were in, not building, but in home improvements, and they say that is the one area that they look at. When people are making home improvements, be it conservatories, extensions, just general decorating, they know the economy is good. Other than that, people just don't because they can't afford it. They're not going to paint their house, whatever it is. And they say they've seen a downturn in that. People aren't having new floors, new carpets, and it's all.
Although didn't loads of people do that just after the lockdown, so they're not ready to do it again. But you can't afford to move because of stamp duty.
Exactly, but there are lots of people that kind of thing is really important, and they're just not having it done.
Very interesting, very interesting. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of this. Whatever industry you work in, what you're seeing, 0344 499 1000. What do you hope to hear from the Chancellor in half an hour, an hour's time? Most of you just say that she resigns, but PMQs in half an hour's time as well. Coming up, lots more top guests. First, though, we are giving you the chance to win tickets to the final of the FIFA Club World Cup. That's thanks to our friends at DAZN. Here's everything you need to know.
Hi, it's Jim White here. Here at talkSPORT, we're gearing up for the Club World Cup in the United States. And to celebrate, we've got 2 tickets to the final in New York on July the 13th to give away. We'll sort flights, accommodation and give you £5 spending money to spend however you like. 18 plus, UK excluding Northern Ireland. All you have to do to enter is text the word football to 83338 by the 13th of June at 11 p.m. and you're in the draw. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You must have the bill payer's permission or send your name and number by post to Club World Cup Final Prize Draw, PO Box 3190, Colchester CO2 8GP, to arrive by 5 p.m. on June the 18th.
This is a TalkSport limited competition run on TalkSport Talk and Virgin Radio UK stations. Full terms and conditions at talksport.com.
So Jim and MG there. Don't miss out on this incredible giveaway thanks to our friends over at DAZN. Very good luck to you. We're going to take a quick break. Up next, former Labour Special Advisor Paul Richards. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back. This is Talk, the home of common sense. Well, let's talk more about all the policies we've got announced. They're expecting to be announced today by the Chancellor with Paul Richards. He's former Labour Special Advisor and joins us once again. Very good morning to you.
Good morning. And
thank you very much indeed for joining us. Just briefly, let's talk about the spending review because we've got some other announcements I want to get to. But this whole, fixing the foundations of the economy, that's done. Growth, that's done. Only thing is, no one is really feeling any of that. So where is she getting all the money from for these massive spending announcements we're expecting today?
Well, I'm coming to you from the heart of Westminster, so the actual division bell may ring any minute, summoning the MPs off to hear what Rachel has to say. And I've spoken to about half a dozen this morning, Labour MPs feeling really optimistic that they've turned the corner, because we are now going to start seeing some of the delivery that people are so desperate for. What she's setting out today is going to be some really big spending commitments, everything from housing through to education, policing, more money for councils to repair local playgrounds, potholes being filled, the real fabric of the community, the stuff that people want to see. And there is a sense that now, after a rocky year, we're going to start seeing some real delivery. And the question was, where's the money going to come from?
Yeah, I was just going to say, that was the actual question.
I was coming to that. Obviously, for example, the increasing expenditure on defence is coming by cuts to the overseas aid budget, and I think in the statement you will see some cuts to government departments this afternoon, as well as some of these spending commitments. Obviously, and Claire will know this as a former special advisor. You get all the good news out at the front. You don't
And then all the small print will have the bad. We'll just basically have to look at the.
May well come later. So
we'll look at the faces of the ministers and on the bench to see who's happy, who's not. Word is that Angela Rayner, we'll come to watch her announcements. Angela Rayner's happy with the deal she's got. Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, not happy. Talk about police cuts. Given that we've got, a lot of concerns over crime, a lot of concerns over basically, the effective decriminalisation of so-called low-level crime. It's not low-level if there's someone shoplifting your goods or stealing your phone or your bike. I'm not sure that's going to go down well with the general public, is it?
Well, I'm slightly wondering whether this is a classic bit of misdirection where, the briefing is that, she's done really badly. And then they'll say, look, ta-da, the rabbit out
look at this, rabbit.
More cops. And we both know a guy called Damien McBride, who is sort of the master of this stuff. And he's behind the scenes here. Quite possibly, I think, sort of playing with our expectations a little bit. And briefing is going to be a disaster. And then when it's not a disaster, that's a triumph. So let's see. The good news is, Julia, in about 3 hours, we will know. So
well, no, less than that. No, less than that. Indeed, we'll know in about an hour or so.
If you're a political geek, of course, this is like Christmas. We're all very, very excited.
Well, again, but the trouble is again, you mentioned over the defence that'll be paid for, and again, it's not going up as much as Mark Rutte, the NATO Secretary General, wants it to go up to, and as many military believe that it should go up to. But as well as I do, we were told that everything is going to be spent covered by growth. Can't borrow anymore. £105 billion a year going out just on servicing the current debt we've got. We've got problems in the NHS, problems in our schools. We haven't got enough police. We need to build more prisons. I'm all in favour of building nuclear reactors, and that's some good, sensible infrastructure work that we need done, reservoirs and all of that. But at the end of the day, we haven't got the growth at the level of anywhere close to the level and the confidence in the economy which is going to deliver those extra tax receipts to pay for everything. So what taxes are going to go up in the autumn, do you think?
Well, I'm not privy to that, and it may well be there will have to be some tax rises. But in the meantime, there will be cuts to government expenditure in some areas.
Such as?
We'll hear of in the next hour. Well, I fear that the Department for Culture, Media and Sport may find itself on the wrong end.
I'd be delighted to hear that.
And it could well be that. Well, but
that's small change. That doesn't
quite significantly. Well, it all helps, doesn't it? Every little helps. And
it is little.
There will be losers in this. Like I say, we've got all the good news out: the new nuclear reactors, the defence expenditure, the NHS getting the money it needs to start bringing down those waiting lists. But there will be departments.
Hold on a minute. The NHS has been given money to bring down the waiting list for the last 3 years, and they've barely touched the size of the waiting list.
Which is why you need the reform.
Which is why you need more money. Those billions didn't work, so we'll have more money.
Reform. If anyone is a reformer, it's Wes Streeting. He's on the wrong side of the unions because he says they need to get more productivity in the NHS. But of course, you need that as well. Plus, we all need to take more responsibility for our own health as well, which is what we've been arguing for 20 years. You can't just have a service that patches people up when they're overweight and ill. You have to do something about it yourself.
So let's give out free fat jabs on my dime. Yeah, that'll solve it. What about welfare dependency? There's a lot of talk about tackling that. We're already likely to see a U-turn on whether or not they're going to bring back, the two-child, get rid of the two-child benefit cap and the like. But that's going to cost a fortune long term. And we've not really seen any real effort to get people who are, let's face it, swinging the lead, who could work, getting them back to work. Until you do that, the welfare bill is going to balloon, and anything else that happens in the economy will be dwarfed by that, won't it?
Well, I completely agree, and we've made the argument as Labour that we need to have more people working, and if you can work, you should. And,
but you're not making them do it.
Have a sort of lifestyle choice of not working is not acceptable.
But it is acceptable. It's completely legal. It's happening right now.
Yeah. Well, I think the Liz Kendall's reforms are going to get criticised, but
they're not going to do anything.
Well, we'll see. And I think that.
All right, let's have a bet right now.
Getting back to work is important.
They're not going to do anything. They really aren't going to do anything. They're going to be watered down because the hand wringers on Labour benches are going to go, oh no, this is awful because this one person was forced to go to work and they had a bad leg that day. Come on.
No, I don't think that's fair. It's Liz Kendall's birthday today, by the way, so shall we just wish her a happy birthday?
Very happy birthday, Liz.
And I think
she'll be thrilled with my birthday
like Wes Streeting, I think she is a reformer. I think she's serious about shaking up the system and actually getting people to work if they can. And that does involve support, it involves training, it involves counselling, all, things.
Oh, but that's it. Carrot. Here's the thing: we need you to go back to work because you haven't got any. You're not going to give you any money this week, so you're going to have to go back to work. That's how you get people back to work. It works. It's really, really simple. Let's also talk about where we are in terms of the cash boost for border police and drones to tackle more migrants. This is where there's got a £680 million cash boost comes. Yet more and more effort being spent on trying to prevent migrants getting to the country. But meanwhile, the £4.2 billion bill for actually housing them all year, it dwarfs all of that. But is there any sign at all that what is spent, on the borders is actually going to prevent that bill skyrocketing as well?
Well, there have been deportations and there have been more people stopped. But the fact is, if there was a single simple thing you could do to stop the boats, then any government would have done it. And the answer is a number of different things. So you have to have better coordination with the French and the Belgians.
We've been hearing about that for years.
So we need the French to get on with it and help more than they are. I think you have to disrupt the gangs, and we've talked about how taking their phones off them,
smash them even, smash the gangs,
and so on. We need to stop the boats getting anywhere near.
We're going to take their phones off them.
But this disrupts the business model, and like I say, it won't do that.
If you took the phone off a people smuggler, could you call in right now? 0244 499 1000. What do you think that people smuggler will then do? And they'll buy a new phone, mate.
But it's about a number of different things all at once, and then the extra cops and the extra border force and the extra drones and all these other surveillance techniques are going to help as well. And slowly but surely, we will get those numbers down. And they're
going up right now.
Because it is absolutely unacceptable. That was linked to the weather, though, wasn't it?
No, because the stats showed actually when the weather was just as good last year, it's still higher than it was last year. I agree with you. I think weather's a big factor, but overall, comparisons are the same days, similar weather.
We do have to go after the gangs because those are the people profiting from this human misery, and they're people making money out, putting people on those dangerous boats to start with. That's where we have to start.
The gangs are also profiting from organised begging. It's a massive, massive issue in many of our city centres, certainly in London. And I know some of my local beggars, very, very well. There's a wonderful woman who sits there who is the size of a sofa and has this hilarious sign saying, "I'm hungry, please give me money." I'm thinking, sweetheart, you've not missed a meal in 20 years. And there's one woman who has a picture of her kid, and she's been begging outside the local tube station for 18 years, since the day I moved into my home, every single day. I mean, to be fair, she's a reliable employee of the organised gangs. And she got a little picture of her kid. I said, you must be a great grandmother to this child by now. This photograph is so old. I mean, it's laughable, but it's organised criminality. At the same time, we're told we're going to tackle that, but going to make rough sleeping decriminalised. They're going to get rid of the Vagrancy Act from 1824. We have people who are sleeping rough in my area, who are heroin addicts, who are boarding up, putting a huge amount of stuff into doorways of shops. They're now unable to even use the doorway of that shop. This should not. I mean, I'm sorry. As much as we want to help those people, we need to put resources into helping them. But we don't solve anything by saying it's legal for you to just basically put your head down anywhere you want, do we?
The situation you've described of, as you say, drug addicts, organised gangs, begging and all of that, obviously unaffected by the fact that it's illegal under the Vagrancy Act. So the Act itself is useless.
Well, no, because it's not enforced. The police don't arrest them. The local shopkeepers call the police and the police won't take them away.
The way you tackle rough sleeping is through trespass laws, so people can't just set up tents in parks. You do outreach work, so a lot of those people, for example, are former military,
they need help.
Folks. So you need more help from things like the British Legion and Help for Heroes and so on. They can do some.
Well, I think the government should be helping people who've served in our military. I'm old-fashioned, but
And you can actually make that organised begging, with increased penalties for that too. So as you say, plus tackling.
The police watch them do it. Round my way, the community officers watch them doing it.
But the fact is that the Vagrancy Act of 1824, as you identify, is useless, which is why we're going
It's not useless. If you are sleeping rough, they can come and arrest you. They just don't bother using it.
Well, this is not about legitimising rough sleeping. It's about ending rough sleeping and doing the things that actually we know work. And don't forget, the Labour government did end rough sleeping last time round. The Louise Casey reforms meant that it disappeared off the streets. And it's only come back in recent years. So it can be done.
Okay,
but it won't be through the Vagrancy Act.
We shall see. Paul Richards, we've covered a lot of ground there. Very much appreciate you joining us on that. Thank you very much, former Special Advisor with Labour there. So you made some fair points there, Claire, especially on the rough sleeping point. I mean, I remember there was a point when it was every single, it's different in different areas, isn't it? I mean, lots of big cities experiences. It was every doorway in local high streets at one point, and then suddenly it disappeared, and that was a government policy under Labour.
Yeah, and it was, and you have to celebrate that. But I do wonder, by just getting rid of the Vagrancy Act at the moment as it stands, what are you going to do? How are you going to help people out of homelessness? And I think it's all very well to say we're going to, charities can be involved, especially when there are veterans. But how about just we enforce the laws that we already have?
Why don't we? Yeah, exactly. Also, I really, really object. There was people collecting for homeless veterans outside my local train station, and obviously contributed. It's really important. I really don't think people should have to rely on charity if they've served in our military.
No, absolutely.
And need help afterwards. I think it's an abomination that is the case. Shouldn't have to be a single charity. They do amazing work, but there shouldn't have to be a single charity that does that. 11:48 is the time. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of that. Give us a call 0344 499 1000. Particularly, what is it like around your way in terms of rough sleepers, vagrants, and the like? Up next, we're going to talk about the National Union of Teachers, the biggest teaching union, who for some reason do seem to think there is no biological or, wait for it, scientific definition of biological sex. These people are a danger to our children. I keep telling you this. We'll talk to Helen Joyce up next. This is Talk.
She's lost control of the public finances. We know that. We know that she made a forecast in March about where borrowing was. Literally just a month later, she was already £14 billion behind. And then she made the disastrous decision last year about winter fuel payments. Now she's reversed it. That doesn't look good. And she's not worked out how she's going to pay for it. While she's saying all this good news about how she's spending money here and spending money there, families will be wondering, well, what's this going to mean for me later in the year? Is she going to come back and ask me for more taxes?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 11:51 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's go to our next guest now, Helen Joyce. She's Director of Advocacy at Sex Matters, also author of the book Transgender Identity and the New Battle for Women's Rights. Such an apt title there, Helen. Very good morning to you.
Hi, Julia.
That battle, we've been fighting it for some time. I think a lot of us thought that that battle, the old battle, had been fought and won some years ago. And then, of course, trans ideology kind of got in the way for a while. And back in April, we had that Supreme Court judgment. Not that you or I needed to have some Supreme Court judges telling us what a woman was, but they clarified that the law was and continued to be that women were defined by biological sex, not what a man thinks on a Wednesday afternoon he is. And therefore, if there was a single-sex space, there was a service just for women, it was only available to women who were biologically female and not to men who believed they were women. It would seem, though, that some people do need to go back to school, including the National Education Union. They are the biggest union for teachers in the country. They have long been, in my view, completely and utterly captured by the left. But their latest revelation about them is some teachings that they've been giving to teachers about what a biological woman is. And basically, they've said that very, very clearly that there is no biological or indeed even no legal and no scientific definition of biological sex. How? I suppose is my first question.
I mean, years and years of being able to talk total nonsense unchallenged, and anyone who corrected them being silenced, unable to get a job, kicked out of jobs, kicked off social media and so on, because of course there are legal definitions and scientific definitions. Yep. The legal definition is in line with what you would think it is. It's what you're recognised as being based on your physiology at birth. Yep. And the scientific definition is about the two reproductive roles, the body that is formed to get pregnant, the body that is formed to impregnate. That's it. It's that simple.
I think at this point I'm now required to call you a bigot or far right or something. Transphobe.
Yes, but those words don't mean what they used to mean, just like woman and man and sex apparently don't mean what they used to mean. I mean, they know this, they just don't like it. The Supreme Court judgment was really clear. It said that the definition for the purposes of the Equality Act is that legal, that scientific definition.
And the law didn't change.
Biology.
The one thing they're right about is the law didn't change. The law has always been that, and it's just people chose to, which we interpreted differently. But this is the thing. This is an online seminar held last month, organised, the paper and everything, since the Supreme Court judgment in July. And it was held by the Trans and Non-Binary Network of the National Education Union members to advise non-trans allies, like you and me, how to support trans rights. The event was entitled Solidarity in Practice, Building Sustainable and Effective Cisgender Allyship. It attracted more than 150 people who have nothing better to do with their time, including teachers and other trade union members. This is my worry, is these people are some of them, are advising teachers. Some of them are actual teachers in the classroom. They have contact with our children, and they are being told this stuff and presumably imparting this stuff to our kids. I mean this quite seriously. I think these people are a danger to our children. I really, really do.
I do too. I think that schools are teaching children to worry about what sex they are. They're teaching them that stereotypes is what makes you a boy or a girl. They're creating gender dysphoria. They're misleading people about the law. They're putting children in danger by telling them that they can use opposite sex spaces if that's how they feel. Yep. None of this should ever have happened. The fact that it has happened requires firm action from the top. What we badly need to see is that the gender questioning guidance that has been sitting in the Department for Education since the previous government, which started it, took ages to get it done, did it. It's still there. It needs to be sent to schools before the summer holidays so that they can, they shouldn't need this, Julia. Of course they shouldn't, but it turns out they do. So that come back in September, nobody can pretend that they don't know what these words mean. Nobody can continue to endanger children.
And the Equality and Human Rights Commission, they put out a statement within days of the Supreme Court's decision, but then they kind of sort of backtracked a little bit on it and sort of, now we're, because their own staff complained they weren't consulted. Like, really? And they're working on a document on this. But I'm amazed by how many organisations, including public bodies, including the sodding Houses of Parliament, including NHS hospitals that we all pay for, basically continuing to operate blatantly, openly against the ruling of the Supreme Court and the current law as it stands. And there doesn't seem to be any penalty for these people. This is one of my issues. The penalty for people who spoke up and said just simply things like your colleague Maya Forstater, I don't believe that trans women, i.e. men, are actually women. I believe they are men. Losing their jobs, losing their livelihoods, going to court, facing horrible abuse online and the like. I don't want people to get abused. I don't really want people to be, lose their jobs. But there is no penalty for all these organisations, bosses included, who are allowing the law to be flouted every day.
I mean, we thought that people would come into line. I'm amazed at how many people are willing, serious people in positions of authority are willing to disobey the law. But the thing is, there can be a penalty. People can go to court. There will be court cases. It shouldn't need more court cases.
No, a hospital boss. No, Helen, a hospital boss who is allowing, and we've seen that Wes Streeting has intervened and made sure that those nurses who are being forced to have a changing room with a male doctor who believes he's a woman, they've been given somewhere else to change. But that court case is carrying on because they want to have the judgment to protect other women. But the hospital boss who makes that decision has allowed that to happen. He or she won't be sacked. The HR people, they won't be sacked. They won't be forced to pay that fine. We taxpayers will pay that fine.
Oh, I completely agree. I mean, actually, I don't think you're being quite fair to the HRC. I think they're about the only organisation that has stood up here. And absolutely everybody else is saying we'll wait until their final guidance is out. Yeah. But they don't need to wait. The Supreme Court said what the law is. It's absolutely ridiculous. So they're the only people who have put their heads above the parapet, and everybody else needs to too. Government departments need to, other regulators like the Charity Commission, organisations like the National Council of Voluntary Organisations, all of these need to too, but they're all cowards and they're all waiting to be told what to do again and forced to. They want to be taken to court, is my opinion, in the end. They want to be able to say to their internal lobby, we've no choice but to go along with what the bigots want because the court made us.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's take them to court then, but I don't want the taxpayer to have to pick up the bill. My thing is, you want to go to court, that's fine. You have to pay the bill, because I'm fed up with us having to pick up the bill. Yeah. Helen, always so great to talk to you. Helen Joyce from Sex Matters. Thank you very much. Claire Pearson, look, you worked in the Home Office. It is extraordinary. People go, we're simply not going to accept the Supreme Court judgment. Excuse me? Now, there's a difference. If they'd ruled the other way, I wouldn't have accepted the judgment, but I wouldn't be flouting the law in the way that these organisations are.
No, you can disagree with something, but you have to then follow the law that's laid down if that judgment is
Try and change the law, but you have to obey the law.
Absolutely, but you can go about and do that. But the DfE holding back... Department for Education, holding back the information for schools, the guidance that they need to follow is appalling. Their one job is to offer guidance to schools so that they are working
again, before the summer holidays, so they can change all the signs over the summer holidays.
Exactly, gives them something to do in August, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, genuinely, as a parent, go to your kid's school. Yeah, simple as that. Have a look. And just say, end of. This is not acceptable. This is in breach of the law. Contact organisations like Sex Matters, and they will, Free Speech Union, others. Yeah. They will help you, and they will issue some very clear legal advice. And the school, if they choose not to take it, well, it's going to look really bad. I mean, some of these organisations are blatantly saying we're not doing it. Yeah. It is madness, but we are fighting back, and we've been doing that for a long time here. Anyway, we're coming up to the top of the hour. We're going to get the latest headlines. Then we're going to take a bit of PMQs, live clashes between the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition. But actually, the main event is at 12:30 when we're going to hear from the Chancellor, her spending review. That's all coming up. This is Talk.
UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. This is Talk, the home of common sense. Very much appreciate you joining us. Lots to talk about. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer, and whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, it is great to have your company. I've also got the company of Claire Pissell, former Conservative government advisor, who's been with us throughout the show. And we're now given the pleasure of the company of one Peter Cardwell, talk presenter and political commentator.
Hi, Julia.
Joining us. I was so, hi, Julia. That sounded really fair. Hi.
Hi, Julia.
Hi.
I bumped into Rupert Bell in the building and
Yep.
I said, this is my Cheltenham Gold Cup, the spending review.
Oh, yeah, you guys love all this stuff, don't you? Well, we're going to get the spending review. We won't take it live. I can't do 45 minutes of Rachel Reeves speaking. You're going to be watching it and giving us all the important bits. But we are going to take a bit of PMQs. Keir Starmer already on his feet, but we're going to wait for Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the opposition, to ask her questions. And then, of course, Rachel Reeves will be at half at midday. We're going to talk about what we're going to hear from the spending review. Also going to be talking about where we are in terms of the NHS. They're going to get a whacking great sum of money. Is it going to do anything about waiting lists? Probably not, we're told. Don't forget, by the way, if you miss anything on the show, you can always go to my YouTube page. You'll never guess what they've come up with as a title for it. We paid consultants a fortune for this. It's called The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. That's how you can find it on YouTube. Thank you for laughing. I love you for that. Hit subscribe so you never miss a thing. Now, we're going to go straight right now to... PMQs in about 30 seconds. So, Peter Cardwell, in PMQs, though, on the day of a spending review of budget, doesn't really matter, does it?
The trick is not to ask economic questions, because the answer from the Prime Minister is always, just hold on about 25 minutes and you'll find out. So I would imagine Kemi Badenoch will go on other matters.
But we know everything is fine because the Chancellor and the Prime Minister keep saying they fix the foundations of the economy.
It's all fine. Yeah, everything's wonderful.
Price, everything fine. Do get in touch. Love to hear from you. 0344 499 1000. Anything you want to say. Your thoughts on PMQs, what you're expecting from Rachel Reeves and all of that. We're going to be talking to Jamie Jenkins, who's a former Officer of National Statistics and analyst, about where we are with the NHS and indeed those job stats showing 250,000 jobs have gone from the economy in the last year, which doesn't suggest to most of us who can do this funny old thing we used to have called maths, that the economy is growing. That's largely not what is normally happening. We've heard from builders saying, look, there's no building going on, people are being laid off, people involved in demolition. A caller pointed out earlier, saying that actually you have to demolish sites before you can build new things, and they are cutting back, so things are not looking good. But there's huge sums of money that are going to be announced for lots of different departments, aren't there, Claire? We're told, but no one knows yet where that money's coming from, and we're not expecting to be told today.
We're not, and it's quite interesting, and I think you alluded to it earlier, is that some of the figures that we're given are over 12 months, some of them are over 3 years, some of them 5, 10 years.
Yeah.
So
that 39 billion for social housing, but it's over 10 years. Well, yeah. Does anyone seriously think, including Rachel Reeves, she's going to be Chancellor in a few years' time?
Well, I think they do.
A year's time?
I think they're holding on to the fact that they think they're going to be in power forever and ever. I think they're going to be
Well, you've put everyone on the payroll. This is what Gordon Brown did when he was under...
Put them all on the payroll.
Didn't he? Put everyone on the payroll. Yep. All right, we're going to go straight to Kemi Badenoch asking her first question.
Mr. Speaker, perhaps the Prime Minister knows something I don't know. There's only one hospital in my constituency. But Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, since Labour took office, Mr. Speaker, inflation has nearly doubled, growth has halved, and unemployment has surged. Is this what the Prime Minister meant when he tweeted that the economy is improving?
Yes. Minister. Mr. Speaker, since the general election, 500,000 more people are in work. And I know she doesn't mention that. She's fixated on talking Britain down. We're investing in the future. Mr. Speaker, even in the last 2 weeks, the Strategic Defence Review, 30,000 new jobs building submarines. Yesterday, the Sizewell announcement, 10,000 new jobs. Tens of thousands of construction jobs building the social and affordable housing that was announced this morning. That's the difference that Labour makes in government.
Mr. Speaker, he must be talking about a different economy. All of us in this House heard about unemployment increasing. Unemployment has increased every month since Labour took office. Last year, he said he was taking the winter fuel payment away to balance the books. But the books are not balanced. In fact, they are worse. This year, the deficit is forecast to be £10 billion higher since the budget. Not since last year's election, since the budget. In what way are the books now balanced?
Mr. Speaker, she's obviously missed the interest rate cuts, the growth figures for earlier this year, the huge, the strategic defence review, local transport, £15 billion going in, free school meals, Sizewell, social housing. Mr. Speaker, but she stands there to lecture us, and I say Liz Truss is obviously back in vogue, advising reform officially now, haunting the Tories, and I remind her that the Shadow Home Secretary, I think he was then Chief Secretary to the Treasury, he gave the Liz Truss budget, Mr. Speaker, 9.5 out of 10. The Leader of the Opposition said what was wrong with Liz Truss's budget was not necessarily the package, that was all right, it was the way it was sold. They've learned absolutely nothing.
Mr. Speaker, he loves talking about Liz Truss because he loves talking about Liz Truss. Why? Why? Because he wants to hide from his own economic record. He's a coward. He's a coward. Every time he stands up there and talks about Liz Truss, it's because he is scared about talking about his record and what is happening to the economy out there. Let's bring it back to the U-turn which he's running away from. A U-turn on a policy that his MPs went out defending time and time again. Let's go through what's happening here. 1 minute, they said it was right to take the winter fuel payment away, that there might be a run on the pound. The next minute, they said it was right to give it back. This is laughable. He stands there all puffed up and self-righteous. Why can't the Prime Minister just admit that he made a mistake?
Mr. Speaker, they left a £22 billion black hole that we had to fill, and that's why we took the right decisions. We've stabilised the economy, that's why we've seen 4 interest rate cuts. The triple lock is committed to on this side, they say it's unsustainable on that side, that's £470 for most pensioners, and good Q1 growth. 3 weeks ago, I said that I wanted more pensioners to be eligible for winter fuel. I'm really pleased we set out the threshold and the certainty that is needed. And she says I don't want to talk about my record. What about free trade deals, record investment, free school meals, breakfast clubs, social and affordable housing, defence review, Sizewell? We could go on all morning, Mr. Speaker, but we've got the Chancellor who's going to say even more in a minute. Mr. Speaker, I think she at the weekend said that she would be getting better in the role. She could start with apologising for the Liz Truss budget. That would be better.
Mr. Speaker, I get better every week. He gets worse. Yes, he gets worse. Last week, Mr. Speaker.
If you think that is a good look, it is a very bad look. And think twice before you try to shoot somebody down in that way.
Mr. Speaker, last week he had to get his lines from the Russian embassy. I think we all know that he is getting worse, and what he does not want to talk about is how he is going to make the economy better. That is what the people out there want to hear, and he's got no answers. His trade deals have unravelled. The Strategic Defence Review, everyone out there is asking where is the money coming from, and the fact is he doesn't know how to balance the books. The Chancellor says the winter fuel payment U-turn won't be funded through higher borrowing. So will the Prime Minister admit that it will be funded by putting everybody's taxes up?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I think she let slip on the Matt Ford programme the other day that she rehearses her fury for PMQs. So a very good rehearsal this morning, I think. Mr. Speaker, she asked what we're doing. At the budget, we put record investment in our NHS and our public service. Record investment. and she comes every week to carp on about national insurance, but she doesn't stand there with the courage of her convictions and say she'll actually reverse it. And the reason she won't, because she won't stand up and say she's against the investment in the NHS, she won't stand up and say she's against the investment in our public services, and we'll all listen very carefully in just 20 minutes when the Chancellor lays out more record investment as to whether they welcome it or whether they say they wouldn't support it.
Mr. Speaker, every week I come here to tell him the truth. The truth that the economy is in a spiral because Labour, that's all of them, Labour put up taxes that cut growth, and we all heard the Prime Minister, he didn't rule out tax rises, so they are going to have to put up taxes even more. This is a spiral. And if that wasn't bad enough, Mr. Speaker, if that wasn't bad enough, this morning we heard that because of his terrible Chagos deal, Mauritius is scrapping income tax. Why on earth should the British taxpayer pay for £30 billion for tax cuts in Mauritius?
Mr. Speaker, Diego Garcia is a vital intelligence and strategic capability, and it's absolutely clear that legal uncertainty would compromise it in very short order. That is why they started the negotiations in relation to it, and no responsible Prime Minister would let that happen. We've secured the base for the long time. That has been welcomed by our allies, by the US, by NATO, by Australia, New Zealand, India. It's been opposed by our adversaries, Russia, China and Iran. And in the second column, we add reform, following Putin, and the Tories following reform.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister knows this has nothing to do with national security, but his bad negotiating. I've had the security briefings. It was a bad deal before, and it's still a bad deal. And then in half an hour, the Chancellor is going to stand up and tell us that everything is fine. But the truth is, she has made bad choices. Bad choices that mean higher inflation, bad choices that have led to lower growth, bad choices that have meant that jobs have been lost every single month since Labour came into office. That's hundreds of thousands of families who've lost their income in Stoke, in Grangemouth, in Luton. Those are their constituencies, businesses across the country. The Chancellor has lost all her headroom. She's fallen out with the Cabinet. She's making unfunded spending commitments which she promised not to do. Isn't the truth that we have got the wrong Chancellor and the wrong priorities?
The wrong choice they made was making her Leader of the Opposition.
Richard Bergen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
OK, well, Richard, there's a good opportunity to come out PMQs. Richard Bergen's on his feet. I mean, that was a signal if there was one. That was quite lively. Again, there is no love lost between those two people, the Leader of the Opposition and the Prime Minister. By the way, Keir Starmer, should you get to watch this later, if you go to my YouTube page, and you really should, you'd learn a lot. It's not morning, mate. Twice you said morning. It's this afternoon. It just really irritated me. Peter Carbon, let's come to you first in terms of that exchange. Can be made not when winter fuel, but you were saying that you'd be wise ahead of a spending review not to go on economic matters, but she went.
She did it in general terms, and of course she'll respond to later on. We'll see what she has to say in regard to the spending review. But certainly there was a lot. It was quite sort of high level stuff. It was quite personal at points. She was talking about him being puffed up and being arrogant, essentially. I don't think we learned an awful lot from that. We know that
wait, what? PMQs where someone didn't answer the question, someone didn't learn a lot?
Hard to believe. But no, certainly, Keir Starmer, I think, mentioned, it was Clary pointed out that he mentioned Sizewell, I think 4 times that announcement yesterday. He kept talking about all the different jobs and so on that people would get. Look, I don't think this was particularly edifying, although I think what people will remember and what people will comment on is Kemi Badenoch saying, I get better every week. First of all, don't really say that, and second of all, I don't think it's true. Sorry.
Yeah, Claire, you and I, Claire Pearsall, I was your former Conservative government advisor, we both sort of winced when she said,
Whole body cringe.
But I'm so much better. I disagree. I think she has been coming out fighting and she's looking more energised. And I think there's a lot of people behind the scenes saying, she's got to come out with the same level of energy that Robert Jenrick, of course, the man who came second in the leadership contest, has been showing. His videos, goodness me, that video he did when he was tackling fare dodgers on the London
15 million
Tube.
views online.
I mean, he's
15 million.
Really, and again, the classic, all the people going, oh, why is he doing this? Because he's a shadow justice secretary. It's reasonable. But Yeah, I thought she rather undermined herself with that comment.
Yes, she did. You never go out there and do that. You never go and say, well, I'm getting better. Don't puff yourself
other people
up
to
when
judge
you're
that.
accusing someone else of being puffed up. Don't do it. You just need to go out there. You need to be consistent, and I think that's what she doesn't have at the moment, is consistently coming out with the right level of questioning and the right energy.
And there's that difficulty with 6 questions, isn't it? I mean, remember the horror of Jeremy Corbyn standing up. Oh, did wrong foot Prime Minister at the time when he first said, when he would say, so I've had an email from Jane in Corby, who was, and you couldn't guess what the questions were going to be. Made it very difficult to prepare for. But I think, the Prime Minister would have prepared for stuff on the economy today anyway. But he said she's fixated with talking the economy down. I mean, we all guffawed at that point, didn't we, Peter?
Yes, absolutely. And I don't think that Kemi Baden wants to do that at all. I don't think Keir Starmer wants to do that. I think it was a ridiculous
that was
comment.
the criticism of Labour when they came in and said, the economy is in dire states, £22 billion black hole. You mentioned that again. You can feel the groans even on Labour benches when they do
Certainly, and that was their strategy when they came into the election, and that didn't work out well for them. Now they're talking about how they fix the foundations. Everything's absolutely perfect, all those interest rate cuts. I don't think the public's buying it. And what Rachel Reeves was talking about at Cabinet this morning, actually, was saying that she needs to make sure that people feel the change that Labour is implementing, that people feel
people
better.
Talk about, obviously people feel it, but it needs to be real.
Yes, of course, of course.
It can't be a trans economy that we feel that it's better. It needs to be better. We need to have more money in our economy, in our pockets. We need more money in our bank accounts. We need to be able to not wince when we get to the till in the supermarket or when you put fuel in the car.
I identify as rich.
You identify?
That'd be nice, wouldn't it? Good if that made it true.
Yes. You never know. You never know.
Yeah, I am a Prosecco socialist. Not even neither. But anyway, but again, coming back to you, Claire. Kemi Badenoch, he raised, the Prime Minister raised Liz Truss, saying, Liz Truss is back in vogue. They know that that's very powerful. And Kemi Badenoch says, he loves talking about Liz Truss to hide from his own economic record. The Liz Truss issue is a very big issue. Lots of people who've been paying attention will point out that, A, borrowing costs are higher now, and what we're having to pay on those 10-year gilt deals is higher now than it was when Liz Truss' budget came out. We know that the huge sums of money that were the concern for that were, A, they hadn't squared the circle with the OBR, but also prepared everybody in advance. But also, crucially, that huge sum of money to bail out people for their fuel costs because of the energy hike. But that does still seem to work. That is something that people remember. People have mortgages. People saw their fuel bills go. They remember that budget. It was, that's got cut through that criticism.
But only for a certain period of time. Now, Labour shortly are to be in power for a year, and there are only so many times you can bring up the Liz Truss budget.
£22 billion black hole.
I wasn't going to mention it. I was going to say
bingo.
The other thing that we'll... and it is a matter of bingo. But there are only certain times that you're allowed to use these things. And I think even his own benches are starting to go, we need to move on from this, because the public are also going to get fed up and say, going on about a black hole, well, what have you done? Going on about Liz Truss, well, what's Rachel Reeves done for me? Because I feel poorer, or whatever it is. So that you can't use it indefinitely. So it's going to need to come up with some new lines eventually, sooner rather than later, let's hope. But don't keep going on about Sizewell and those jobs, because they aren't there yet. They're not real jobs.
And they won't be there for a decade. And again, that'll be over that entire period of time.
Precisely.
And this is a problem for Rachel Reeves.
15 years.
Yes.
This is a problem for Rachel Reeves later on today, when she says things like, we're going to build 1.5 million homes over the course of this Parliament, and we're putting money into that. Well, you're not. I mean, you're
already behind schedule.
You're already
on that.
massively
but
behind
even like
schedule.
the £39 billion announced for extra social housing, over 10 years. A, you're not going to be Chancellor in 5 years' time. Frankly, even in a year's time, it's questionable. And it's only £4 billion a year. I know, I can do maths. I mean, I wish she'd done. I didn't even work at the Bank of England at any point as an economist. But it's £4 billion.
But it's on your CV.
It's on everyone's CV,
Are you a solicitor as well?
Yeah, I was a solicitor and I was a Bank of England economist for 10 years.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, and you get better every week. So, it's all there.
Hey, you can't improve on perfect. Even I didn't believe that when I said it, by the way. But thank you for laughing again. I love having him in the studio. But that's the thing, isn't it? It's just I think Claire makes a really valid point there. Just even the Labour backbenchers, they go, hold on a minute.
Yeah.
They also know they've got the threat. And again, this is the interesting thing. Even Keir Starmer, in a Q&A he gave earlier this week, when he's talking about, and Rachel Reeves as well, they talk about reform, not the Tories. The Tories, what they do, what they say, they're saying that's irrelevant. They're dealing with reform, and a lot of those backbenchers, there are very few seats where it's Labour versus Tories fighting it out. They are fighting reform in a lot of their
And
cases.
this again shows how incredibly important Prime Minister's Questions is. Most people don't watch it. Most people see a clip on the news or whatever.
We don't normally throw it.
But Kemi Badenoch, this is her one time of the week where she's guaranteed attention. She's struggling to get that attention elsewhere. Reform are getting a lot of that
But it's also about
attention.
shoring up your backbenchers, saying, hey, but
I'm
again,
in control.
I get better every week. Love to hear your thoughts. 12:22 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to get to your messages. Then, of course, Rachel Reeves will be on her feet at 12:30. Do not worry, we won't take it live. We'll bring you all the details. I think that's a fair compromise, guys. You don't have to listen or watch her, but you get to know what she's saying. Yeah? You're welcome. This is Talk.
That disappoints me, not just about Ed, but Keir's been questioned on it as well. And I spoke about this with someone yesterday who from the Tory side. I think people would have a lot more respect for politicians if they said sorry sometimes and said, you know what, I called it wrong. I'm human. You know, we've got to do better. I'm really sorry. We were very lucky to have a very mild winter, by the way. Could have been miles worse, but I'm sorry for the fear and the whatever, and I've called this wrong, and we're going to put it right, and we're going to do it this way.
Harry Cole said last week to me, if you bleed for months, it's no good. You just go.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. 12:24 is the time. Claire Pearsall's still here. She's former Conservative Government Advisor. We're also joined by Talk presenter and political commentator Peter Cardwell. Just something I should have brought to you a bit earlier before we go to these calls. The Institute for Fiscal Studies, the director, Paul Johnson, a big regular on this show, he has said that Rachel Reeves could be forced to raise taxes in the wake of her spending review. He says if anything at all goes wrong with any of the current forecasts, which it will, then they will come again in the autumn with potential tax increases. I don't think, Peter, that comes as a surprise, does it?
No, it doesn't, and I think this is something that came up at Cabinet this morning. This is a very old school tax and spend Labour kind of idea. You know, we will see what happens, but I'd be astonished. We were also told the budget a few months ago was a sort of once in a parliament budget. We'll put up everything will be fine. We'll sort out national insurance, all that kind of stuff. Bit of pain now, and then it'll be fine later. Well, guess what? The economic problems are stacking up and continue for Rachel Reeves, and she's going to have to tackle them in about 5 or 6 minutes' time.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. Before then, let's get Georgina in London to tackle them, because I have a funny feeling Georgina would do a damn sight better job on anything than Rachel Reeves. Georgina, lovely for you to join us. 0344 499 1000 is the number you've called. Georgina, take it away.
Good morning, my darlings. Good morning, Claire.
Wait a minute, are you with Keir Starmer? What were you all up to last night? You still think it's morning? Were you all out on the milk together?
I am telling you now, I am absolutely shaking with temper. The PMQs, it's no more than a college debating team. I'm absolutely disgusted. And I will tell you now for a fact that we are paying the bills for all these promises of Labour. We will be paying these bills in the autumn. There is nothing more sure. Keir Starmer, this is This is PMQs who need to start answering questions, not answering questions with a question, and usually regarding the prior government. We're not interested in that anymore. We know they made a holy hash of things. We need to be in the here and now, sorting problems out in Britain as it is at the moment, which is an absolute disgrace. Kemi Badenoch, she has started kicking too late. She is only passionate about things, subjects she's got passion for, and I'm afraid she's not showing passion for what's going on at the moment. Start kicking, my love. Start doing your job. Get up there. Let him know who's boss, because at the moment he's got the floor, and that shouldn't be allowed. Honestly, Julia, I'm absolutely, I'm lost for words.
Another satisfied customer. I think we'll describe you as, Georgina. I can certainly feel the passion. You're right. I mean, Institute of Fiscal Studies, anyone who can do basic math, who wasn't or was an economist at the Bank of England for 10 years, knows we're going to be paying for all this. So Labour benches are going to be cheering all this money being spent, go, yay! And we were told, oh, taxes on working people won't go up. I mean, it doesn't. The numbers don't add up, do they?
Well, we will be paying for this. There's nothing more sure, as God made little green apples. And goodness help the taxpayers of this country. They are promising money that they do not have.
Absolutely.
They don't have them, Julia. This is our bill to pay in the future. So every million they are spending on whatever they're spending it on, we will be paying out. They need to cut the slack. They need to get rid of this net zero ideology, which is not working. They need to cut DEI. They need to stop spending money over to France. Basically, it's money through a rope. They're not doing anything to earn it. We can use that for our own border defences.
I mean, honestly, seriously, put Georgina in government. We all agree. Georgina always, I literally just love everything she has to say. Claire, I mean... I mean, yes to everything, yes.
Yes, I mean, Georgina is spot on. And I think that what we haven't also noticed is that David Lammy has just handed over the borders of Gibraltar to the EU as well.
Sorry, while we were on air?
Yes, yeah. Because there's not a distraction going on at all today, is there? Where are you going to bury your bad news?
We know he's been over in Gibraltar. You were joking about this earlier.
I was, and it's happened.
Production team, can you look up what has he actually done, Peter?
I think what he's done is said that the border at Gibraltar, you're going to have EU officials there checking passports.
Because there has been an issue of people in Gibraltar getting into Spain to work where they largely work.
But you've got what is in reality going to happen is you're going to have people from mainland Great Britain and Northern Ireland going to Gibraltar, having their British passports checked to get into a British territory, and that's something a lot of people will be very unhappy about. And I think there's this mission creep, certainly in regard to Gibraltar.
It's almost like that they don't actually in any way respect the democratic vote for Brexit sometimes.
What?
I know,
Labour.
it's weird. I know, it's weird.
Good job they didn't call for a second referendum.
Who would do that? I mean, who would do that? Absolutely no one would ever do that. Let's go to another phone call, 0344 499 1000. This actually is on our conversation with Helen Joyce. Miranda is in Cumbria. And Miranda, you want to talk about the National Education Union, the biggest teachers' union, basically telling teachers, there is no legal or scientific definition of biological sex. These people are insane.
Hello?
Hello, we can hear you. And the dog.
Yeah, and the dog. I was just going to say, I went to Primark the other day, and in the changing rooms there, this is about major corporations, basically. The sign for the women's changing room on the left says women. The sign for on the other side says for any other sex. It's really difficult to grasp.
But hold on a minute, wait a minute. Was there one for men? Maybe the men who don't want to have to get changed when there's a woman present.
No, it doesn't actually say men, but it says any other sex. So essentially it is protecting women, biological women, but I think they're so frightened that they've had to do this because they're frightened they're going to be sued.
But that's not fair on blokes who just don't want to, they don't want to be in a changing room. I mean... But again, but previously it was men and then anyone who wants to, because they allowed men who pretended they were women or thought they were women into the women's changing room. So I suppose women are more vulnerable than men in those circumstances. But still, just have men and women.
Exactly. But I think they've tried to get around the rule by saying this. But essentially, like you say, They're making men now.
We will note that to Helen Joyce and see what Sex Matters have to say about it. Miranda, it is just painful. What do you make of the teachers?
Ridiculous. I just think it's. I mean, my son studied biology. He is teaching science in schools, but it's at senior level. I don't think they discuss it a great deal. However, they do. He teaches biology, so essentially, it's. I'm befuddled by it. I've been bamboozled. I
know, we do not use bamboozled enough on this show. Right, from now on, every day, those are the rules. Miranda, thank you very much indeed for your call. Just to reiterate what you were both saying, Claire and Peter, about yet another sellout by this government. David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, was in Gibraltar yesterday or last night for talks over the final parameters of an agreement, post-Brexit deal, that would hand control of the territory's border to Europe. Sees Gibraltar join the bloc's Schengen free movement zone. I mean, Britain, even when we were in the EU, we're not in the Schengen free movement zone. A lot of countries trying to move out of the Schengen free movement zone on account of how it's basically been a free-for-all for anyone who arrives in Italy or Greece or Spain to travel anywhere they want. So if you're British and you arrive in Gibraltar, you will have to show your passport to Spanish or EU border guards when you land at the airport, even if you've arrived from Britain. So you go from, as you say, you go from Britain to a British territory, you're going to have to show your passport to a Spanish or EU border guards. No doubt, of course, we'll be in the longer queue as well, won't we? That'll be fun. They really, really are taking the mick.
Well, the good news is Rachel Reeves is now on her feet, so the economy's going to be fine.
Excellent. Everything's fine. Relax, everybody. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to hear from Jamie Jenkins, a former statistician at the Office for National Statistics, about a lot of the things we're going to hear. Rachel Reeves will bring you all the highlights, inverted commas, highlights coming up. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very, very good afternoon to you. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Claire Pearsall is still with me, a former Conservative Government advisor and Talk presenter. Peter Cobble is with us as well. He is the one listening to what is going on in the chamber of the House of Commons. Rachel Reeves is now on her feet after PMQs, where she is talking about her spending review. It's 45 minutes, so frankly, it'll go on for quite a while. As we get any details, he's going to give me a nudge, or maybe just shout at me, and then we'll find out what is going on. But so you don't have to listen to the whole 45 minutes, because I want to have some listening figures by the end of the show. Let's go first though to Jamie Jenkins. He's a former statistician with the Office for National Statistics, and he joins us right now to talk about some of those figures that we are likely to hear about. Very good afternoon to you, Jamie.
Good afternoon, Julie. You good?
Very well indeed. I want to talk to you first about the NHS, because we're told that they are going to be getting, the NHS get like another 30 billion. I mean, I don't know, why not just make it 400 billion? Why not just keep spending the money to help with the waiting list? But the latest stats suggest that actually the NHS isn't going to hit its waiting list target.
No, so I think they've had this target to try and get the percentage of patients seen within 18 weeks around 92%, Julia. It's been a target for a long time now. Now, if you look at where we currently at, it's about 60%. And if you take back to the last 15 years, in 2007, we were about 60%. They did manage in a couple of years to get it back up to 90%, but we're in a slightly different place now in terms of where the demographic of the population is. It was 95%, so it was over the target in 2013. But it's fallen back from 2018. So the back end of, say, that the Tory government decided for them.
But this isn't. But crucially, this 18-week target, it's not to be treated. It's just to get you getting referrals to be seen by a consultant. 18 weeks is about 4 months. Imagine you get a referral because someone thinks you've got cancer or something, and you might be seeing your first appointment with a consultant in 4 months. Every 2 weeks that you don't get treatment, not just seeing someone in in an office, if you don't get treatment for your cancer, contributes to your chances of dying of that cancer. This is literally condemning people to death, this policy.
Oh, totally, Julia. And this is the type of target that in a country like the United Kingdom, you should be aiming for 100%, not 90%, 60%. It should be 100%.
Don't worry about you lot. You won't get seen in time and you won't get your treatment in time, but never mind, that's how things roll. That doesn't. We're a first world country with what, the 5th biggest economy, 6th biggest in the world. Surely we should be able to manage this.
We should do, Julia, and I believe they're going to announce kind of a real terms increase in spending. So you're saying, another black hole of you talk about the black hole the Tory government left, the NHS giving money to there.
But we've given a lot more money to the NHS in the last few years. Yes, of course, there was COVID and all of that. But even then, since then, we've had huge, big sums of money going in. But we've not seen an increase in the number of people treated. Look, you were a statistician, specialising in 2 areas, one in labour, one in health. How is that possible?
It's pretty much just the bureaucracy and the waste that must be going in there, Julia, because, over the last 12 months, now, since the Labour government had come in, that target of around, they were aiming, say, to get back up to 90%, is hovering around 60%, they haven't moved. They're talking of a 2.8% real terms increase, so that's above inflation. But you've got to remember that the population's growing and all the migration that's coming into the country, and people tend to get sicker as they get older.
Yeah,
so
and we are getting older.
Yeah, and if you look at the population 60 and over or 75 and older, that's going to grow over the next 4 or 5 years as well. That's going to continue to grow. So over half of the real terms increase is going to be eaten up straight away just by population growth. So that's not going to go straight into...
Yeah, it's not going to improve care for everyone else. And that's because that baby boomer generation, a massive big bulge in the population who are reaching the age when they're going to need a lot of health care.
It totally, and this is only going to get worse. So we talk about the money now. I know the Reform Party have got their Doge and they're trying to cut waste. Ultimately, they've talked about reforming the NHS, Julia. Parties are going to need to do that. I think the one thing with the NHS that's quite clear is it's a political hot pot and a political football.
Yeah.
All parties need to come around the table and come up with a new way of running healthcare in the UK.
Well, the criticism always, they'll say, like Nigel Farage, a Reform leader, they'll say, well, he wants to privatise the NHS. Well, no, he wants to, not like America, he wants to move to an insurance-based policy for healthcare provision, which is what's used in pretty much every other country in the Western world and provides much better care, better outcomes, you're more likely to survive cancer, heart disease, diabetes, and you get treated quicker. So I'm not entirely sure that that's the spade to bash them over the head, but that they think it is anymore.
Well, no, and the good thing about, when you've got different countries doing different things, you copy something that works somewhere else. And I don't see anywhere around the world where anybody copies what we do.
This will never Cuba. No, this will never catch on. Jamie, I know also, when we spoke to you so many times, that over lockdown, talking about health statistics, someone who could actually crunch the numbers and tell us what the reality is, and cannot be told, oh, you're just making it up. No, I'm a statistician, I know my stuff. But you've also spent a lot of time dealing with the labour statistics, and we quoted some of the statistics you had provided yesterday in terms of the jobs that have simply disappeared from our economy. Latest stats suggest 250,000 jobs have gone since the tax-raising budget just last autumn announced by Rachel Reeves. She's on her feet right now delivering her spending review. Reliably informed by Peter Carball, who's listening to it, that we haven't actually got anything of note yet. So, guys, you're not missing anything. When we do, we'll hear from him. But where did 250,000 jobs just disappear, Jamie?
Yeah, and it's getting worse over the last month. Nearly half of that has just come within 1 month alone. And it's quite clear that the jobs tax, the national insurance hikes have seen that increase. But what's quite interesting, Julie, that's the headline number.
Yeah.
If you actually start looking in terms of what types of jobs are being lost, well, the biggest fall is in hospitality. So obviously people can't afford to keep the workers on. But more importantly, people probably aren't going out as much. So people will be laid off as part of that. We are seeing some increases in the economy as well, though, Julia. So health and social care seeing an increase, obviously to try and get these waiting lists down. But if public sector employment's going up and private sector employment's going down, well, you've got to get the tax from the private sector to pay for a public sector. And that's the important thing here, that you cannot have a functioning economy. And Rachel Reeves talking about her spending plans today, if you've got less tax coming in from the private sector to fund the public sector. That's the conundrum. And the thing that's not really, when you look at those headline figures, that's what's not really
more jobs. And again, we know that people in the public sector pay tax as well, but crucially, their wages have been ultimately paid for by the private sector. Not that it isn't a symbiotic relationship, because, of course, if we didn't have schools and hospitals and roads and things like that provided by the public sector, private sector companies wouldn't be able to create those jobs.
No, and it's often something I'm told as well, where public sector work. I worked in the public sector. Yeah, they do pay tax, but ultimately the government needs to tax the private part of the economy first
to
get that money to pay for them. So it's pretty much just giving a bit of the money back that they've had from the private sector in the first place.
But we ain't getting growth, and we are not getting a boost to the economy and everyone's lives getting better unless we boost the private economy, not just spend more and more money on public sector jobs. Jamie Jenkins, so appreciate you joining us. Thank you very much indeed. He's a former ONS statistician. Let's come to Peter Cardwell, talk presenter. Your penalty today, your punishment today is listening to Rachel Reeves delivering her spending review. How is she sounding today?
Well, not much better than that. She's the big announcement so far is 2.7% of GDP for defence. That's a clarification of where we are. So by this time in 2027, we're going to have 2.7% of what the country makes put to defence. That will pay. That includes the intelligence budget as well, which I think there'll be a little bit of massaging perhaps of those figures. But John Healey,
we're currently at 2.3%.
That's right. So a big uplift for them. We're talking about £11 billion more money for defence. They're talking about, and they've ruled this, they've talked about this for quite a while. We had the Strategic Defence Review last week. A rare smile from John Healey, the Defence Secretary, today, and she's moving on now to the integrity of our borders. And
well, that'll be a short conversation.
Yes, £280 million more per year to the end of the spending review for security commitments in regard to the border. So more money for that. That's been trailed. We've talked about that.
I mean, but again, a lot of this has been trailed. And this thing, I'm old enough to remember, Claire, when people had to resign because people found out about the budget in advance. Yes. You literally, when I was first a political reporter, you didn't know a single thing. It wasn't trailed. Now, I mean, virtually everything, a budget, a spending review is already out and about. But again, the trouble with that, I mean, they try and put out the good stuff earlier, don't they?
Yeah,
and we get the Sunday papers, and then all the journalists sit there going, I haven't got much here. I'm going to have to look through to the back of the whatever the announcement
is. Back of the Red Book, yes. And I think this is the problem, is that we've all become so used to having the details come out days and days in advance. And I think we saw this with the defence spending review, where the Speaker of the House of Commons rightly irritated that all of that was briefed out to the media and perhaps the industry before MPs had even
The industry knew
like
a day beforehand, didn't they?
They did, and that is really, really bad form, but there's nothing to do about it. Or have we got some more news?
Peter's looking animated every day.
Yeah, happens every now and again. The announcements are coming thick and fast. Rachel Reeves has now said that she's going to end the use of hotels for asylum seekers in the course of this Parliament.
They said that before the election. How's that working?
Well, it's going to happen apparently.
But if you end the use of hotels, unless you're putting them in campsites,
where are they going?
They're going to go into private accommodation, and they've just signed a whole load of contracts for 5 years with Serco and others to provide that, which is accommodation would be used by British people otherwise.
The processing apparently is all going to be sped up. The Home Office, of course, was the last department to actually do a deal with the Treasury on this money. So Yvette Cooper apparently.
So they're going to process people quicker, and they're going to give them indefinite leave to remain, because they can't actually deport a load of these people, Afghanistan, Iran.
No, they're going to be deported if they've no right to be here.
And then they're going to be here, and they're just going to live on benefits, but it won't be in a budget that we can see.
And it won't be in a hotel.
That's what's going to happen.
apparently. So that's what she's talking about.
Yeah, but good luck trying to rent a home in the next few years if you're on low
They're
income.
going to build 1.5 million new homes, so
We're
everything's
not
going to
doing
be
that
fine.
either. I mean, this is already unravelling. 12:45 is the time. Just for instance, he's done something terrible in a past life. Peter Cardwell is going to carry on listening in. Claire Pearsall, we're going to set you free. We shall unlock the door, fly free. Thank you. We're saving you from this. She's actually going to be sitting watching it outside. I promise you, because Ian Collins will be coming in very, very soon to tell us what's happening on his show. But more from Peter Cardwell in just a couple of moments. Love to hear your reactions as well. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk with a Home of Common Sense.
They didn't mention what the statements of these gentlemen that got them sanctioned were. Right. Because when you look at it, they haven't actually said anything so terrible. It says they're being sanctioned for disagreeing with the two-state solution. Right. After October 7th, 2023, 90% of the Israeli public disagrees. The left-wing parties, President Trump disagrees with the two-state solution. Also, they support President Trump's plan for Gaza, which includes allowing people who want to flee Hamas.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk the Home of Common Sense for me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Peter Cardwell still with us. He is watching and listening to Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, delivering her spending review. So far, we've had just a few announcements. 2.7% of GDP by 2027 will be spent on defence. That's £11 billion a year more on defence. It's currently 2.3%. Of course, calls for it to be going to basically 5%, really. We're told that £280 million more on protecting our borders. Lol. But also this announcement, they're going to end the use of, in a few years, of hotels being used to house the Channel migrants. And I'm going to tell you categorically right now that is not going to happen, full stop. What is also really interesting, Peter, is Rachel Reeves has had sort of attacks on various different other party leaders. They're literally obsessed with Nigel Farage at the moment. I'm not sure they're helping themselves by criticising Nigel Farage. They're constantly putting him in the news. She claimed Reform UK had racked up £80 billion of unfunded commitments. We've had that number before. Saying the member for Clacton, Nigel Farage, might be playing friend of the workers now, but some of us are old enough to remember when he described that disastrous Liz Truss budget as, and I quote, the best Conservative budget since the 1980s. She said they are simply not serious. Was that going to play through well?
I'm not sure it will. What's really interesting is that both Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer are talking now, and this is a shift in the last couple of months of the parties opposite, plural, not the party opposite. The Labour know that the Conservatives are not their main rival anymore.
But do you think also they talk up reform because they know that reform, more reform goes up, the more Tories go down, but it also means basically it splits the right-wing vote.
Yeah.
And there's every possibility, despite the abject incompetence of this government, they could get elected again with a split right-wing.
Well, I do think, and I've said this for a while, and I know it's not going to be popular, but I do think that the most likely outcome of the next election is either a Labour victory or a Labour-Lib Dem coalition. And I think that's because the right is going to be very, very split.
Oh, let's get back into the EU. Oh, no, we already are, it turns out. I mean, that's basically where we are with Keir Starmer. Now, David Lamb, the Foreign Secretary, on Tuesday night arrived for talks in Gibraltar. And a deal, we understand, hasn't been done, where basically if you are British, you arrive in British territory from Britain on an aeroplane in Gibraltar, you will have to go through customs. We have to go through passport control with Spanish and EU passport control officers to arrive from Britain to a British territory. That's the deal they've done. Basically, it's really so that they can have basically free movement between Spain and the Rock, for an awful lot of people who live and work on the Rock, who also live and work in Spain. I've got a call on this as well. Let's go to the phone lines, 0344 499 1000. Gary is on the line. Gary, now you live in Spain, but you run a company in Gibraltar employing local people. So do you welcome this? Will it make life easier for you?
No, I don't think it will, and I don't. This is the first I've heard of this.
Yeah.
And I don't think that the people of Gibraltar, if they haven't been, because Gibraltar, the people there, they're very adamant that they want to be British, and everything has to be British, and they don't like the idea of Spain getting involved in anything. Normally, they would have a referendum, and if they haven't had one, then.
Well, they did have one in the referendum in 2016. The people of Gibraltar voted to remain in the EU, but that doesn't mean you can remain in the EU but still be British.
Exactly, and the thing is that the fault of the Spanish border being in Gibraltar when you fly in, because that has never happened before.
Yeah.
All you do is go into Gibraltar, and it's if you go into Spain,
then you have to cross the border. I can imagine it would make business, it'd be, travel for a lot of people, go work or live in, whether in Spain or Gibraltar, a little bit easier. But you know what? I mean, again, there are some principles involved here, aren't there?
Yeah, exactly. And in 1967, on the 10th of September, Gibraltar voted virtually 100-0 to stay British and have nothing to do with the Spanish. And they are absolutely adamant that they do not want anything to do with Spain.
No, well, we're very, very clear that this government, certainly Keir Starmer and the likes of David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, really do not respect democratic votes, because they didn't respect the 2016 referendum. Their campaign in 2019 was clearly to basically have a second referendum and not respect that. So we know where they stand on that. No wonder people of Gibraltar weren't consulted on that. I'm sure a lot of my colleagues coming on air after me will want to talk to people about that. Gary, appreciate your call. Thank you very much indeed. Peter Caldwell, I mean, that's something that's been announced. Again, that will not announced. The information has slipped out during the spending review.
Yes.
Yeah, it's good day to bury bad news.
Absolutely, yeah.
Have we got any good news or bad news yet? More from the Chancellor on her feet
Just
still?
defence really is the main one. We're hearing a lot about AI, about skills, about all sorts of
the
different...
AI revolution, is that along with the Green Revolution? All those jobs?
All the different revolutions,
Brilliant.
yes, it's all... And,
it's all going to be fine.
Of course, the nuclear revolution as well.
Fine.
But, of course, the question is, where does money actually come from? A lot of this will be in regard to will there be growth? There's been reaction already from various businesses, including one chief executive of one of the world's largest independent financial advisory and asset management organisations has...
Might know what he's talking about.
Well, the De Vere Group, Nigel Green, says Rachel Reeves is spending money she hasn't got, and the tax reckoning will come this autumn. There's simply no other path. The UK is already heavily taxed. Growth is flat. Borrowing costs are high, and the global appetite for gilts is thinning. The autumn budget is where the axe will fall.
Yeah.
So she's promising a lot now, but the
it
money...
all sounds great now, yeah. But that's the thing, but those headlines are already written, aren't they? Everyone's said that. The Institute of Fiscal Studies, the director, Paul Johnson, has been a regular on this show. He says Rachel Reeves could, and again, I think he's being nice, could be forced to raise taxes in the wake of her spending review. If anything at all goes wrong with any of the current forecasts, he says, then they will come again in the autumn. Now, we already know everything that Labour said they were going to do was predicated on there being growth. There ain't growth in any meaningful sense, unless we're just going, oh, this
0.7%.
I mean, well done, everybody, you know. People aren't feeling it. We're not seeing, you know, we're seeing jobs. We've got 250,000 fewer jobs in the economy this year than there were at the last election. That tells you what is going on. People know whether they're better off or not better off. They're
You're
not
absolutely
stupid.
right.
People can do the maths in their own finances and their own mortgages or rents or the energy bills or the supermarket and putting the food, you know, putting the fuel in the car. They understand these things. But this is the crucial thing. They're going to announce all this stuff because they want to appease Labour backbenchers. She also wants to, you know, keep her support within the cabinet.
Lots for Scotland actually announced in the last little while.
I mean, we've already had London Mayor Sadiq Khan. And he's unhappy because there's not.
Sir Sadiq to you.
No, Sir Sadiq.
Knight of the realm.
Sir Sadiq. There hasn't been enough money allocated to infrastructure projects in London. I'm sorry, I live in London. We've had enough for now. Can we please make sure we can actually do that thing everyone talked about, levelling up and actually improve the infrastructure? Massive need for transport infrastructure, in particular in the
I think that giveaway will come to some degree. It's Rachel Reeves, though, saying, admitting at least voters are yet to feel the benefits, as she would put it, of a Labour government, and that's the question. Will people feel that? Will they actually be grateful and say, yeah, Labour, you're great, I'm going to vote for you?
But at the end of the day, someone's got to pay for it. Now, polls again and again always say people want a load of spending on this, they don't want to cut on that, they also don't want their taxes to go up, which is why everyone promises they won't put taxes up, because you don't get elected if you say that. However, what people are happy to have, and we saw this, people voting for Jeremy Corbyn, and they saw this with every single time people say they... happy to have someone else's taxes put up big businesses tax, put up the oil companies tax, put up the tax on, you know, Starbucks or Google, put up the tax on the billionaires, millionaires. But what we've discovered is when you do that, they leave.
Yeah, and there are many millionaires, individual people, as well as huge businesses leaving. And you know, there are lots of people who say, "Oh, just tax the rich a bit more." Well, actually, rich people pay 30% of the taxes of this country.
Top 1% in this country pay 30% of all the income tax.
And if you reduce that number of people, well, the rest of us who aren't as rich are going to have to pay a bit more.
You're not a million. They don't pay you $1 million here. Well, we're going to have a word with management.
Neither of us get paid as much as Ian Collins anyway.
No, I was going to say multi-billionaire Ian Collins. Are you threatening to leave the country if they tax you more?
I spoke to my
Will your
people.
pips squeak?
My accountant at Goldman Sachs said to me the other day...
Surely.
Said we can make this work somehow. Do you know what I find unforgivable about Labour? It's a wider point, in fact, but they had so long in opposition to get this right.
Could have made a plan.
They could have made a plan. They could have done rehearsals.
They didn't know what the books were like. They didn't know how bad it was. That's their line.
But even that, though, Julia, the presentation of it, they should have had Arlene Phillips and Lloyd Webber in there choreographing, you know, the way they're going to get this thing planned out. They could have made it look good. And they look hopeless. I mean, they look like they're out of ideas in what, 9
I know, it's
months?
not even a year. I compare and contrast this all the time with Tony Blair. It's different economic situation.
I was about to say that.
The economy was amazing. Tony Blair was such an amazing performer, but they came in, they hit the ground running, they went for it, they had all these ideas of what they were going to be doing. I disagree with some of them, I agreed with others, but this lot looked just totally... It's like, we've won. Now what do we do?
Yeah. It's precisely that.
So have you been seeing what's the news about Gibraltar as well? But basically, we've just ceded authority to the EU for controlling the borders of Gibraltar.
Hello. I mean, people did say at the time when Chagos and all sorts of other things were going on, you know, keep your eye on Gibraltar, because the question did come up about that at the press conference over Chagos and the like, and it was kind of batted away a little bit as if it meant something else. But now that's where the spotlight is.
Absolutely. While we're talking, anything more, Peter Cardwell? I mean, are we genuine? We are saving people from listening to 45 minutes of Rachel Reeves. Again, I said to you again, this is public service broadcasting at its best.
100%.
I've been listening to a lot of it. She says she's not going to return to the destructive era of Tory austerity. As we've said, going to apparently